Chapter 1519. After arriving at the Jade Green Demonic Valley, the leader did not have time to rest. He chopped down trees and used materials to build a house overnight. He was going to put all the equipment and the crystal barrier in the house and wait for Tang Tang to leave the valley with the amethyst lotus. Due to the commotion from the leader's side, Wu Gang and Do Ling, who were observing from the side, finally realized that something was wrong. After a short discussion, they decided to let Wu Gang stay and monitor the situation, while Do Ling immediately went to find a water source and reported to the leader of the Huanchen Pavilion. A few hours later, the sect master of the Fantasy Dust Pavilion, Fu Qinghao, also quickly arrived at the scene. There was also a group of people following behind him. Apart from the disciples, there was also a huge bronze cauldron being pulled by a horse carriage. The cauldron was extremely huge. There were strange incantations carved on it, and every incantation was glowing with a faint green light. The holes on the cauldron would emit green smoke from time to time, as if there was a vast power within it. It looked extremely mysterious. Behind the carriage that was pulling the bronze cauldron was a dozen strong men. Each of them was holding a small cauldron, but these small cauldrons looked relatively ordinary. They didn't have the solemn feeling of the big cauldrons. After the strong men arrived at Wu Gang and Do Ling's location, they carefully placed the cauldron in a suitable place. Then, they took out axes, saws, and other tools, and quickly ran into the surrounding forest to chop down the towering trees. Fu Qinghao did not follow the strong men to chop down the trees. Instead, he stood at the same spot and listened to Wu Gang and Do Ling's report. After listening, his expression became a little solemn. He first glanced at Hong Zhu and Li Xian, who were standing not far away. Then he turned around and looked at the busy construction scene on the opposite side. Fu Qinghao's sharp eyes quickly swept around, and his gaze finally stopped on an old man. A cold light suddenly burst out of his eyes, and a murderous aura shot out like a bolt of lightning. The old man seemed to have immediately sensed Fu Qinghao's murderous aura. He flew up and stood on a huge rock. At the same time, a terrifying aura shot out from his eyes. He and Fu Qinghao were separated by a small lake in the middle. They stared at each other and did not want to lose to each other in terms of aura. Just when the two groups were about to start fighting, Xiao Chun, who was looking for the amethyst lotus in the Jade Green Demonic Valley, also noticed something strange. Stop! Xiao Chun pulled the wildly running Bei's spiritual beast to a stop, and stopped at the side of a huge rock. He stared coldly at the two male corpses on the ground not far from each other. He could not help but feel a little suspicious. These two people, why were they here? Xiao Chun, are the two people on the ground dead? Why do I feel that they look familiar, as if I've seen them somewhere before? Nie Xiaoyu also frowned, and looked at the two bodies on the ground. The two bodies on the ground were naturally Gong Sun Yen and Jia Tuyao. However, they were already bleeding from their 7 orifices, and could not be more dead. Nie Xiaoyu had met them once when she was waiting for the teleportation at the Heavenly Awakening Gate, so she had some impression of them. Oh, they're just two idiots. They probably thought there was some treasure here, so they wanted to come in and make a fortune. In the end, not only did they not get anything, but they also lost their lives. Xiao Chun came back to his senses and said disdainfully. Xiao Chun recalled that Jia Tuyao and his father racked their brains to deal with Jia Muzin. Gong Sun Yin also changed from arrogance to respect. They were not good people. He did not expect that they would lose their lives here. It could be said that evil had its retribution. So that's how it is. Then should we find a place to bury them? Nie Xiaoyu nodded and asked softly. There's no need. These people deserve to die. Xiao Chun withdrew his thoughts and shook his head. Then he pulled on the mane of the Bai Zhe spirit beast and asked, how far do we have to go to get there? It's about 1 kilometer ahead. There's a terrace field. That's it. Hearing that Xiao Chun rejected Nie Xiaoyu's suggestion, the Bai Zhe spirit beast immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Xiao Chun did not bring the 2 dead bodies up. Otherwise, its beautiful and soft fur would definitely be dirted by the blood. Then hurry up. Stop dilly-dallying. Xiao Chun shouted loudly. In any case, it did not matter if Gong Sun Yen and Jia Tuyao died. It would prevent them from harming Jia Muzin and little Chick Xing. When he returned, he would remember to inform them. The Baizé spirit beast puffed out a few mouthfuls of white mist from its nose. It unwillingly continued to run forward. It complained in its heart. It's all because of you. You forced me to stop and look around. As a result, I was delayed. In the end, you blame me for not doing my best. Damn it. If it weren't for the fact that I couldn't defeat you, a high-level spirit beast like me would not be ordered around by you. After running for less than 2 minutes, the Baizé spirit beast finally arrived at the terrace field where Tang Tang had picked herbs. However, as soon as it saw the terrace field, its expression changed. It looked around in horror and stood there dumbfounded. Its mouth was wide open, and it could not close it no matter what. It did not know what to say. The purple mist lotus that had been growing here had all disappeared inexplicably. Most importantly, except for the purple mist lotus, all the other natural treasures were gone. This place was originally used as a storeroom by the Baizé spirit beast, so it did not usually come here. It would only come here to forage for heaven and earth treasures, when it could not find another place to forage for food. What's more, the territories of different spirit beasts in the Green Devil Valley were divided. People would not easily step into the territory of other giant spirit beasts to look for food. Since the Baizé spirit beast had made a name for itself here, other spirit beasts would not disturb it. Therefore, when it saw the place was destroyed like this, it was dumbfounded. What the F***CK? Are you kidding me? I haven't even seen a single violet flower petal. Could it be that this shabby place is the treasure land that produces amethyst evil lotus like you said? Xiaochen frowned. He jumped off the back of the Baizé spirit beast unhappily and walked toward the terrace field. Nie Xiaoyu also followed him closely. Xiaochen walked to the edge of the terrace fields and took a closer look. However, he discovered some strange clues. The natural treasures in the terrace fields were growing in a strange state. The places where there should have been plants now looked like they had been cut by a lawnmower. All that was left was neat stubble. Chapter 1520. Xiaochen turned his head to look at the other areas that had not been cut. He discovered that there should have been all sorts of natural treasures growing there. But at this moment, it looked like they had been forcefully eaten by some kind of animal. There were even many bumpy teeth marks on them. After looking around, Xiaochen judged from the traces left behind that it should not have been caused by other spirit beasts. Instead, it seemed more like it was man-made. However, could there be someone like the Baizé spirit beast in the Jade Green Demonic Valley? Not only was it unafraid of the poisonous gas, but it could also feed on natural treasures? Baizé finally noticed the abnormality and stuttered. Xiaochen, I really didn't lie to you. There were indeed many purple mist lotuses here before. But it seems that they have been picked before we came. Look, some of the roots are still steaming. I guess the person who came to pick them has just left. At this moment, Baizé was standing at the edge of the terrace field, where the purple mist lotuses used to grow. The roots of the purple mist lotuses were very neat and smooth, as if they had been cut by a knife. If they had been eaten by a spirit beast, the cut would definitely not be so neat. What made Baizé most depressed was that it would be fine if the person only picked the purple mist lotuses. But why did he take away the other treasures as well? Wasn't he too greedy? Wasn't he trying to cheat me? Xiaochen, I think this big horse does have a point. Nie Xiaoyu tugged at the corner of Xiaochen's clothes and said softly, why don't we hurry up and follow the marks? Maybe we can catch up with the person who picked the herbs? We can talk to him, and maybe he will agree to share some with us. That way, when we go back, we can exchange for Miss Cheng Minjing. Nie Xiaoyu naively thought that as long as she could bring back the purple mist lotuses and give them to the second in charge, she could exchange for Cheng Minjing smoothly. In this way, Xiaochen wouldn't have to risk his life to fight those people. What big horse? I'm a spirit beast. A high-level spirit beast who cultivates immortality. What you're doing is an insult to my character. Baizé immediately protested sternly. It was usually annoyed by strange people comparing it to a horse. How could that be the same thing? How could those lowly domestic animals compare to a high-grade spirit beast like him? Aren't you just a grass mud horse? What's there to explain? Hurry up and chase in the direction of the purple mist nefarious lotus. What's the point of talking so much? Are you looking for a beating? Xiao Chen hugged Nie Xiaoyu and leaped onto the Bei's spirit beast's back. He then slapped the spirit beast's head. Oh, okay. I'll chase after him. Let's talk things out. Why do we have to resort to violence? The Bei's spirit beast grunted from the beating. It was so angry that it gritted its teeth, but it could only swallow its anger. As it sped along the main road, it carefully stared at the almost undetectable messy marks on the grassland. It was afraid that it would accidentally go the wrong way and be beaten up again. Sitting on the back of the Bei's spirit beast, Xiao Chen's expression was a little solemn. A cloud of doubt appeared in his heart. All of this was too strange. Apart from him and Nie Xiaoyu, as well as some special spirit beasts that could survive in the dark green demonic valley, theoretically, no one else should be able to resist the poisonous fog of the dark green demonic valley. Yet, someone could come in and harvest all the purple mist nefarious lotuses before him. It seemed that the people of the cultivation world could not be underestimated. Although Elder Nangong said that the dark green demonic valley was so terrifying, there were still people who could escape unscathed. There was another point of doubt that had been lingering in Xiao Chen's heart. Was the person who harvested the purple mist nefarious lotuses the same person as the person who harvested the other treasures of heaven and earth? If that was the case, why did that person harvest the purple mist nefarious lotuses in batches, but use such a rough method to obtain the other treasures of heaven and earth? If there really were two people, and they didn't know each other, then which sects did they belong to? Did they meet each other before? But there were no signs of fighting in the terrace fields. Most importantly, what was the purpose of the person who needed the purple mist nefarious lotuses? Could it be that there was someone else in the cultivation world who knew how to reconstruct the body other than the Elder Heaven Ancestor? Outside the teleportation formation in the dark green demonic valley, the leaders of the two forces were still standing on opposite sides of the lake. They were confronting each other with their auras. They were each accompanied by a few trusted followers, who were also glaring at each other with hostility. They were in a state of mutual hostility. Not far behind them, the disciples of their respective sects were not affected by the auras of the two sides at all. They were still immersed in their construction, and the structure of the houses was gradually taking shape. Great Sect Leader Fu, what a coincidence that we actually met here. The great leader finally could not hold back and spoke first. Fu Qinghao casually glanced at the great leader, as if he was slightly disdainful of him. He did not reply, and only snorted coldly. The great leader smiled faintly. He was not offended by Fu Qinghao's disdain. He still said unhurriedly, "But as far as I know, this doesn't seem to be the territory of your Huanshan Pavilion, right? You brought so many subordinates with you today. If you came here to play, it's barely passable. But you're wantonly destroying the natural vegetation here. Isn't it a little inappropriate? Humph. Don't talk nonsense with me. I think you should be very clear in your heart why I'm here." Fu Qinghao said expressionlessly. The breeze on the lake blew through his white hair, revealing a pair of gloomy and indifferent eyes. "I'm really not very clear about this. It seems that your Huanshan Pavilion seems to have the idea of snatching territory." The great leader's expression did not change. He casually asked, "Could it be that as the number one sect in the cultivation world, you're interested in a mere few acres of land? Stop putting on an act." Fu Qinghao ridiculed in a lukewarm tone. "Since the purple mist evil lotus grows in the dark green demonic valley, naturally, whoever gets there first gets it. Do you think you're the only one who would send people to collect it?" The great leader was slightly stunned. Several thoughts flashed through his mind quickly. Is the Huanshan Pavilion really looking for the purple mist lotus? Where did they find suitable people? Haven't we already taken down Tang Tang, whom the Huanshan Pavilion had their eyes on before? Could it be that they have more channels than us? The great leader had always believed that he was the only one who possessed the richest information channels and connections in the immortal cultivation world. Therefore, even though the Huanshan Pavilion was the number one sect in the immortal cultivation world, he still looked down on them. Chapter 1521. However, Fu Qinghao's words just now made the first master feel a vague sense of unease in his heart. However, at this time, the boss could only pray silently in his heart, hoping that Tang Tang would be lucky and not encounter the people of Huanshan Pavilion in the Green Demonic Valley. Otherwise, it was not a big deal for her to lose her life. If the purple mist lotus was taken away by the other party, he would not be able to explain it to his master. During this period of time, he had worked hard to keep an eye on this matter. If he really messed it up, his master would blame him, and he would not have a good time in the future. Although the thoughts in his mind were a mess, the great leader still refused to admit defeat. He put on a fake smile and said, "Hee hee, look at what you're saying. Of course you can send people in. But if it's my subordinates who get the purple mist nefarious lotus first, then your Huanshan Pavilion will have nothing to do with it. After everything is done, my Heaven and Earth Association will be promoted to the #1 power in the cultivation world. And the Huanshan Pavilion will have no choice but to resign to their fate and retreat to the second line." Humph, it's too early for you to be complacent. Fu Qinghao stared at the boss and immediately retorted, "The people I sent in are experts at the mountain opening stage. We don't know who will be the winner until the last moment." Having said that, Fu Qinghao was actually not sure. After all, the opponent was not weak, and they had mastered some evil methods that could assist in cultivation. If they injected these things into Tang Tang, then it would not be so easy for him to win this time. Experts at the mountain opening stage. The great master's face changed slightly when he heard that. Fortunately, he was good at hiding it. He turned his eyes away at once, and did not let Fu Qinghao discover the abnormality. Then, he quietly glanced at the monitor behind him, wanting to see where Tang Tang had gone. For some unknown reason, the surveillance magic tool seemed to have been interfered with. He couldn't see the images inside at all. Only a few vague images would occasionally appear, and he couldn't tell what kind of scene it was. There was no connection between the images. Although the first leader felt somewhat anxious, he could only put on a nonchalant expression and continue facing the Fantasy Dust Pavilion's sect master. From time to time, he would test the other party verbally, trying to get some information. Although both sides seemed to be in a state of mutual hostility, they did not make a move. The reason was very simple. In fact, the strength of both sides was about the same. If they used violence now, it would not benefit them at all. It would only bring about mutual destruction, giving the other sects the opportunity to take advantage of the situation. Therefore, they would only move their lips. Before a new situation appeared, the situation would not worsen further. Just as the two sides were starting to feel sore from staring, the wind on the lake in the middle suddenly grew stronger, and a turbulent undercurrent began to condense. Meanwhile, a huge cyclone appeared above the teleportation formation of the Jade Green Demonic Valley. With the appearance of the cyclone, a gust of wind accompanied by lightning blew up, sweeping the originally calm lake water into the air. Then, a lightning bolt mixed with electric current drilled out of the cyclone, above the magic circle like a python, and then smashed heavily in the middle of the teleportation magic circle. Boom! A muffled sound continued to spread in the air, and a big hole was smashed in the teleportation formation by the lightning bolt. Gravel and debris shot out in all directions, and a green mist rose from the magic circle. At the same time, a blurry figure appeared. The first leader and Fu Qinghao both turned their heads to look, trying their best to see who was being teleported out. However, the teleportation formation was still shrouded in green mist, so the figure inside was very blurry. They could not see who it was at all. Both of them knew very well that the green mist was brought out from the valley, and it was highly toxic. Therefore, they did not dare to rush to their deaths rashly. They could only stand in front of their respective camps anxiously, waiting for the green mist to gradually disperse. The young master was originally in the crowd at the back. At this time, he was also attracted by the noise. When he ran to the lake, the mist around the teleportation formation just happened to disperse, revealing Tang Tang's pretty face. The young master immediately shouted in ecstasy, "Tang Tang! It's Tang Tang! Ha ha ha! Great leader Fu! It seems that this old man has a slight advantage in this round." The green mist dissipated, and the great boss naturally saw the figure clearly. He couldn't help but let out a few complacent laughs towards the sky. Before the laughter died away, the first leader's figure moved. The next moment, he appeared next to Tang Tang and grabbed her backpack. Then, he once again displayed his body movement skill, and could not wait to return to his own camp, leaving Tang Tang to slowly walk from the teleportation formation alone. At this time, Fu Qinghao's face was very ugly. On one hand, he was very dissatisfied that the first person to come out was Tang Tang. On the other hand, he was a little surprised by the strength of the first leader. This guy seemed to be more powerful than before. Seeing the first leader's complacent look, Fu Qinghao was very unhappy. He pretended to be calm and said, "Then I will congratulate you in advance. However, the strength of the person I sent in is also very high. It will not take long for him to come out smoothly. Then you guys wait slowly. Maybe in another 8 to 10 years, you guys can wait for that person to come out." Ha ha ha. The first leader laughed very arrogantly for a while. While mocking Fu Qinghao, he lowered his head to check the purple mist lotus in his backpack. After confirming that everything Tang Tang collected was authentic, the first leader could not hold back his excitement. He immediately carried his backpack and quickly walked to the wooden house that his men had built. Facing the unscrupulous ridicule of the first leader, Fu Qinghao was extremely angry, but he did not dare to explode on the spot. After all, the other party was holding the purple mist lotus. If the two sides fought, it would not benefit him at all. Fu Qinghao now hoped that Xiao Chun could come out quickly. If he could not get the purple mist lotus before the first leader finished his work, then the Huanqin Pavilion might really have to bow down to the first leader in the future. Tang Tang glared at the proud young leader in front of her. Looking at his face of a villain intoxicated by success, she could not wait to drag him into the green demonic valley again and poison him to death. However, considering that Cheng Minjing was still in his hands, and even if she poisoned him to death, she might not be able to smoothly escape from the Heaven and Earth Association. Tang Tang could only forcibly suppress her anger and asked word by word, "I have got the thing for you. Now can you fulfill your promise and let me leave with Cheng Minjing?" Chapter 1522. "Oh, why are you in such a hurry? Cheng Minjing, Miss Cheng is in the cabin over there. But let me give you a suggestion. You might as well wait here for a while. There will be a good show to watch later. I guarantee that you won't want to leave again after watching it." The young master said with a mysterious face, "I'm not interested. Besides, I only promised to help you collect the amethyst nefarious lotus. I didn't promise anything else. Now that the task has been completed, you must immediately release me and Cheng Minjing." Tang Tang refused directly with a cold face. "Hee, even if I don't release Cheng Minjing, what can you do to me?" The young master crossed his arms in front of his chest and shook his legs proudly. Tang Tang's face immediately darkened. She pointed at the young master's nose and shouted, "Do you want to break the promise?" An evil smile suddenly flashed across the corner of the young master's mouth. He said in a strange tone, "I remember that you people entered the cultivation world this time to look for you and Xiao Chen's parents, as well as Cheng Minjing's second uncle, right? Don't you want to know where they are now?" You know where they are?" Tang Tang was stunned when she heard the young master's words. She was shocked and immediately said with a suspicious face, "You're not saying this on purpose, so that I can continue to stay here and help you do some dirty things, are you? Humph, believe it or not. Anyway, you can decide what to do next. But the premise is that you have to wait for us to finish the most important thing." The young master shrugged and said lightly, "When the time comes, you and Cheng Minjing can go wherever you want. No one will stop you." After that, the young master snorted again. He didn't want to talk to Tang Tang anymore. He ordered his men to keep an eye on her and turned to walk in the direction of the cabin. Tang Tang gritted her teeth and stared at the young master's back. She clenched her fists and pondered for a moment. Then, she resolutely followed the young master and walked toward the cabin. Tang Tang planned to go in and see what these people wanted to do with the amethyst nefarious lotus. If she had the chance to meet Xiao Chun in the future, she would tell him all these secrets. In the newly built cabin, in addition to the crystal shield containing the spirit, there was also a huge electronic device placed in the most eye-catching position. It was so high that it almost reached the ceiling. The device was divided into 2 layers. The upper layer was a cylindrical glass carrier filled with fluorescent viscous liquid, and the lower layer was a computer with an LCD display that was flashing green light. There was also a large place to install the battery in the back half of the device, so even in the wilderness, there was no need to worry about power shortage. At this moment, the great leader was operating on the computer, according to the instructions of the primordial spirit in the crystal cover. In addition, there were a few subordinates in white uniforms working hard to grind the purple mist black lotus, and then proceed with the first step of purification and quenching. Every time a plant was quenched, the medicinal powder would be poured into a beaker, and then carefully poured into the cylindrical glass carrier of the large instrument. And the spirit floating in the crystal shield was pointing with a cold voice. The bridge of the nose on the face should be higher, the eyes can be bigger, the hair color can be set to the shape of golden waves, and the color of the pupils should also be changed to gold. This way it will look more fashionable. Yes, Miss Luan. Everything is done according to what you said. The great master was very flattering. After setting all the settings, he thought for a while and turned his head to ask, "By the way, do you think I should make the chin sharper? When I was in the secular world, I saw a lot of models. All of them had a sharp chin, white skin, and looked like little porcelain dolls. They were quite pretty." Yes. It must have a sharp chin. Miss Luan agreed and reminded again. "I've told you many times, don't call me Miss Luan, call me Master or Queen Luan." "Oh, okay, Queen Luan." The great master changed his address a little awkwardly. He tapped on the computer and finished setting the shape of the chin. When he was about to report, he heard Miss Luan's instructions again. "Also, don't leave any fat on my waist. My chest can be set to D. F cup. The butt should be round and perky, and the legs should be long, but not too slender. It must give people the vibe of a queen at first glance." "I understand." The great master blinked his eyes speechlessly. He obediently set the settings according to Miss Luan's requirements again. Seeing that she had no new ideas, he enlarged the model of the female human body on the LCD display and introduced it to Miss Luan. "Master, everything has been done according to your requirements. Please take a look and see if there are any other problems." Miss Luan made an O sound and carefully looked at the face, facial features, and upper body of the model. Gradually, she showed a satisfied smile. The great master sighed softly. However, before he could relax for long, when Miss Luan's gaze continued to move downwards, her face changed. She roared at the lower body of the model. "What the hell is this? Why is it so dark there? And there is so much hair. Who do you think I am? Hurry up, change it to a pink-white tiger, and remove all the hair under the armpit." This is the original setting. I haven't even touched it." The great master's old face suddenly turned red, and he weakly defended himself. He didn't dare to say anything more. He quickly lowered his head to operate the computer, removed all the excess hair, and changed some parts to pink. He muttered in his heart, "This Queen Luan knows quite a lot. She can even say the words white tiger. It seems like she is also an experienced person." Boom! Just as the model was about to be set up, there was a sudden muffled thunder outside. Then there was a commotion in the crowd. The great master's heart moved. He faintly guessed that the people from Fantasy Dust Pavilion had come out. However, he was very busy at the moment and really didn't have the time. He could only give the young master a look and ask him to go out and see what kind of people were sent into the green demonic valley. The young master nodded in understanding and quickly ran out of the door. He came to the lakeside with familiarity and opened his eyes wide. He saw a huge thing standing in the transmission array. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't look like a human. "What is this?" The young boss stared blankly for a moment before taking a closer look. Only then did he realize that there seemed to be 2 human figures sitting on the upper half of the gigantic object. At this moment, they were tightly pressed together. It seemed that the gigantic object was a mount. Chapter 1523. Just as the young master was seriously studying it, the huge figure suddenly moved slightly and then disappeared into thin air. Everyone was shocked. Just as they were about to shout, the two people and their mounts appeared again and stood steadily on the shore. Xiao Chun. Seeing the two people, the young master was dumbfounded and could not help but exclaim. The person sitting on the white horse in front of him had a familiar face. Even if he turned into ashes, he would still be able to recognize him. It was Xiaochen. How could he be from Huanchen Pavilion? Moreover, wasn't the person sitting in front of Xiaochen Niexiaoyu? Could it be that Niexiaoyu was not dead? Had she been coincidentally saved by Xiaochen? When Xiaochen heard a man call his name, he looked in the direction of the young master in confusion. Suddenly, a surprised expression appeared on his face. He pointed at the young master and said, Situ Qitian, it's you, you idiot. Why aren't you dead yet? Didn't I send you flying with a slap just now? It turned out that when the cyborgs were teleported to the world of cultivation, Situ Qitian had also been sent here by a slap from Xiaochen. Moreover, his face had hit the ground, and he had been seriously injured. Who would have thought that the dying Situ Qitian and the group of cyborgs would be teleported to a certain spiritual crystal vein? Coincidentally, they were discovered by the great master who had come to inspect them. Then he brought them back and used many precious treasures to save Situ Qitian from the brink of death. Then, he brought the cyborgs to the spiritual crystal vein and made them start mining step by step. After Situ Qitian woke up from his coma, he discovered that the great master who had saved him was actually the former sect leader of Awakening Heaven sect, Situ Haotian. The spiritual crystal vein happened to be Situ Haotian's business. In order to prevent Situ Haotian from discovering that he was plotting to usurp power in the inner world of martial arts, Situ Qitian suddenly had a bright idea. He knelt down on the spot, kowtowed 3 times and kowtowed 9 times, using the reason of thanking Situ Haotian for saving his life as an excuse to recognize Situ Haotian as his adoptive father. Then, he stayed by his side and began to busy himself. Situ Haotian didn't think too much about it. After all, in the isolated and helpless immortal cultivation world, he happened to save a junior from his own sect. He was very happy. Since Situ Qitian was sincere, he didn't refuse and directly supported Situ Qitian as the young master. After obediently working for Situ Haotian for a period of time, Situ Qitian gradually discovered that his foster father's strength was simply unfathomable. Not only did he monopolize several large spirit crystal mines in the cultivation world, but he also managed a huge organization called the Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce. The more Situ Qitian learned about his foster father's background, the more surprised he was. He didn't know what Situ Haotian was planning. Later, he simply took the opportunity of a celebration banquet to indirectly inquire about the situation. At that time, the Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce had successfully developed and flourished everywhere. Situ Haotian was so happy that he drank a little too much. In addition, he felt that Situ Qitian wasn't an outsider. So he took advantage of the alcohol and told him everything that had happened after he had opened the gate of heaven. When Situ Haotian entered the world of cultivators for the first time, he found that there were many experts here, and they all cultivated internal strength. At that time, his demon venerable great perfection realm strength was nothing here, and no one cared about him at all. Moreover, when Situ Haotian wanted to eat and stay, he found that money in the secular world couldn't be used here. Basically, spirit crystals were used as currency, or barter was used. In desperation, Situ Haotian could only scrimp and save, and then work for people everywhere in order to earn some meager spirit crystals to support his daily living expenses. While working, Situ Haotian gradually discovered a few problems. Although there were a few particularly powerful sects in the immortal cultivation world, they were extremely short of spirit crystals. In addition to being self-sufficient in their own sects, they were used to using treasures of heaven and earth, or mental cultivation methods and martial arts skills, to exchange with others in case they needed spirit crystals. Moreover, the information channels of those sects were relatively closed. Once, Situ Haotian accidentally killed one of their disciples who had come out to gain experience. Originally, he was flustered, afraid that the other sect would come to seek revenge. As a result, after hiding for a while, he found that the other sect didn't know about it at all. What was even more surprising was that there were actually many deserted spirit crystal veins in the immortal cultivation world. Those big sects felt that mining was something for the lower class to do, so they were usually very reluctant to send their disciples to mine. They didn't even have the thought of taking the spirit crystals for themselves. Several times, Situ Haotian's work task was to mine spirit crystals. Even if he secretly hid a few pieces, no one would find out. After working in the immortal cultivation world for a while, Situ Haotian finally pondered over it. This was a huge business opportunity. After thinking for a long time, Situ Haotian gritted his teeth and resolutely gave up the idea of continuing to work. He left the immortal cultivation world and returned to the secular world to study for a period of time for an MBA. Then, he set out from the inner martial arts world, bringing with him all the top-grade spirit jades in the open heaven gate, as well as the first batch of experimental biohumans. He once again broke into the immortal cultivation world, preparing to show off his skills. In the immortal cultivation world, top-grade spirit jades were equivalent to spirit crystals. So, after Situ Haotian once again entered the immortal cultivation world, he immediately used the capital he had on hand to rent a place for the biohumans to settle down. Then, he looked for a relatively large spirit crystal vein and instructed the biohumans to excavate it day and night. After digging out the spirit crystals, Situ Haotian sold them at a high price. Very quickly, he accumulated a part of his capital. Then, he once again used the same trick and bought a spirit crystal vein that no one cared about. Just like that, it snowballed. Very soon, he went from being unknown to the public to being a rich tycoon. As the saying goes, the weather is unpredictable. Just as Situ Haotian's mining business was flourishing, he once went to an ore vein deep in the mountains to inspect it. In the end, because of the biohuman's careless operation, the ore vein directly collapsed. Under the protection of many biohumans, Situ Haotian was lucky enough to escape. He was not directly crushed to death by the spirit crystal vein. However, he and the biohumans were buried deep underground. With the biohumans leading the way, Situ Haotian and the others continued to go deeper into the ore vein. When they wanted to explore the other side of the exit, they coincidentally met Miss Luan, who was recuperating in the crystal shield. Miss Luan naturally would not let Situ Haotian go. She immediately displayed her strength and offered him extremely attractive conditions. Then, they hit it off immediately and became close partners. Chapter 1524. After escaping from the mine, Miss Luan began to provide high-level technical support to Situ Haotian and once again modified the biohumans to make them more efficient. Meanwhile, Situ Haotian began to establish the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce, mainly responsible for helping Miss Luan inquire about the whereabouts of the purple mist nefarious lotus, as well as establishing a good relationship with the major sects and families in the cultivation world. After hearing that the purple mist evil lotus was in the dark green Devil Valley, Situ Haotian immediately increased the expansion of the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce. In addition to making a lot of money for research, he also wanted to find suitable candidates to go to the dark green Devil Valley to collect the purple mist evil lotus. After Situ Haotian finished listening to his adoptive father's description, he couldn't help but admire the other party's business acumen. Then, he had a flash of inspiration and came up with a rotten idea, which was to let him lead a group of mountain bandits to plunder the places where the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce was having a hard time developing. When those merchant sects couldn't hold on anymore, they would have to rely on the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce to hold the fort. Situ Haotian immediately agreed to Situ Haotian's suggestion. The two of them planned for a while and arranged for a bandit's hideout in the impoverished Basian County. They then set up a mountain bandit's nest in Lucien County and began to plunder without restraint. As expected, it was quite effective. Just as the two of them were ambitiously preparing to go all out, the leader of the bandits was killed by Cheng Minjing. They had just captured Cheng Minjing, and the mountain bandits' lair had been destroyed by Xiao Chen. Situ Qitian was naturally very depressed. Situ Haoyan had used his old connections and sent out Elder Nangong to kill Xiao Chen without a trace, but he had failed and returned. In addition, the search for the purple mist nefarious lotus had already entered the most intense stage, so he had no choice but to have Situ Qitian stop the horse bandits and mountain bandits project. He planned to first use all his strength to find someone who could enter the Jade Green Devil Valley. After that, he sent Nie Xiaoyu to break into the valley but failed. He then captured Tang Tang and sent her into the valley. He finally managed to bring back the purple mist lotus, but he didn't expect Xiao Chen to appear in front of him like a god descending from the heavens. Most importantly, when did Xiao Chen collude with Huanshan Pavilion? The Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce didn't investigate this information at all. Situ Qitian, are you stupid? This young master is asking you a question. Aren't you dead? Could it be that he had become a big dumpling? You don't even know how to talk? When Xiao Chen saw Situ Qitian staring at him in a daze, he shouted impatiently and jumped down from Witzert's spirit beast along with Nie Xiaoyu. You must be Xiao Chen, right? Before Situ Qitian could reply, Fu Qinghao had already surrounded him with a group of subordinates and called out in a very friendly manner. Fu Qinghao was also afraid that Situ Qitian would rise in revolt and do something disadvantageous to Xiao Chen. Hence, he immediately ran over, patted Xiao Chen's shoulder, and said warmly, "Hoo-hoo, I didn't expect that little friend Xiao is actually so young. Heroes indeed come from youngsters. This time, you helped our illusionary dust pavilion greatly. This food definitely won't treat you shabbily." Situ Qitian naturally understood the intention of Fu Qinghao's action. It was obvious that he had specially come over to support Xiao Chen. His words implied that Xiao Chen was from the illusionary dust pavilion and warned him not to act rashly. However, Situ Qitian was not a fool. He naturally could not attack Xiao Chen, who he could not figure out immediately. He could only fake a smile and change the topic. So, Xiao Chen, you've sided with the illusionary dust pavilion. No wonder great sect master Fu thinks so highly of you. I really couldn't tell what your strength is now. Of course. Without waiting for Xiao Chen to speak, Fu Qinghao straightened his back proudly and interjected. How can little friend Zhao's strength be something that you can probe? If you don't want to ask, then don't ask. What's the big deal? But I'm a little curious. It's not like you have a constitution that allows you to be immune to poison. Situ Qitian's gaze secretly glanced at Nie Xiaoyu, who was not far away, and he continued, You're not some living dead person either. So why are you still safe and sound after entering the Jade Green Demonic Valley? Xiao Chen was slightly shocked. Just as he felt that there was something wrong with Situ Qitian's words, he saw that Situ Qitian's gaze was wandering. Following his gaze, he just happened to see Nie Xiaoyu and Li Xianer happily whispering to each other. So, you're the one who captured Cheng Minjing and Nie Xiaoyu. Xiao Chen was instantly enraged. He grabbed Situ Qitian's collar and roared fiercely. Hurry up and release Cheng Minjing, do you hear me? Otherwise, believe it or not, I'll make you fly in 128 different postures. Situ Qitian's face flushed red from being suddenly grabbed. He was about to retort when a coquettish cheer suddenly came from not far away. Husband Xiao Chen, you're finally back. Were you injured in there? I was waiting outside for you so anxiously. As soon as Xiao Chen finished speaking, an exquisite figure threw herself at him. Xiao Chen's expression relaxed slightly, and he loosened his grip slightly, tossing Situ Qitian to the ground. Then he turned around and hugged Hongzhu, whose face was filled with joy. Cough, cough, cough. Situ Qitian coughed a few times, and finally managed to catch his breath. Just as he was about to organize his words to ridicule Xiao Chen, he raised his head and saw Hongzhu kissing Xiao Chen a few times. After that, Hongzhu carefully examined Xiao Chen's body and found that there were no obvious wounds on his body. Only then did he relax. The way Hongzhu acted, as if no one else was around, stunned the surrounding people of the Fantasy Dust Pavilion. Don't worry, I'm fine. Xiao Chen gently patted Hongzhu's shoulder then pointed at the Bai Zhe spirit beast and Nie Xiaoyu. We also accidentally found Nie Xiaoyu and that brain-damaged spirit beast in the Devil's Valley. It can be considered a pleasant surprise. As for the specifics, I'll tell you in detail later. Hongzhu nodded obediently. He knew that Xiao Chun had important matters to attend to. After kissing him again, he walked to the side and whispered with Nie Xiaoyu and Li Xian'er, turning his head to glare at Sita Qitian, who had just gotten up from the ground. Xiao Chun's tone became a little dangerous. Sita Qitian, have you thought it over? Are you going to let him go obediently? Or do you want this young master to make you fly a few more times? When Fu Qinghao saw the way Xiao Chun treated Sita Qitian, he could not help but be slightly taken aback. He immediately realized that there was definitely a grudge between the two of them, and it was probably not a small matter. He immediately rejoiced in his heart. It seemed that this kid was definitely on his side. Sita Qitian was very displeased. He straightened his clothes, which had been pulled askew by Xiao Chun, and made a mental draft. Just as he was about to open his mouth to speak, he was interrupted by Fu Qinghao. Little friend Xiao, have you found the materials? Why don't you give them to me first? Once we're done, I'll definitely help you get justice. Chapter 1525. Who the hell are you? I don't even know you. Xiao Chun could not help but roll his eyes. Ever since he came out earlier, this old fellow had been following behind him, trying to please him. It was as if he was very familiar with him. Xiao Chun did not know where he had come from. It was simply ridiculous. I'm sorry. I was too excited and forgot to introduce myself. The corner of Fu Qinghao's mouth twitched. He forced a warm smile and said, I'm the sect master of the Fantasy Dust Pavilion, Fu Qinghao. Wu Gang and Do Ling, the ones who asked you to help find the amethyst nefarious lotus, are my disciples. Although he looked warm on the surface, Fu Qinghao was a little depressed in his heart. There weren't many people who dared to speak to him like this in recent years. If it wasn't for the amethyst nefarious lotus, he would have exploded long ago. Oh, it's you. Xiao Chun only noticed Wu Gang and Do Ling, who were following behind Fu Qinghao. He thought of his mission and shrugged helplessly. There's nothing left. Sita Qitian's men have taken everything. I've searched the entire Jade Green Demonic Valley and couldn't find a single one. Only the root of the amethyst nefarious lotus is left. Xiao Chun could have come out earlier, but in order to reconstruct the Elder Heaven ancestor's body, he still held on to a strand of hope. He searched the demonic valley for a while, but he couldn't find the amethyst nefarious lotus. What did you say? They've all been taken? Fu Qinghao's expression changed. He could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. He pointed at Sita Qitian's nose and scolded. Sita Qitian, aren't your men a little too much? They actually took all the amethyst nefarious lotuses? Do you think you can do whatever you want just because no one can restrain you? The reason why Fu Qinghao did not doubt Xiao Chun's words at all, and was so certain that he vented his dissatisfaction on Sita Qitian was not because he trusted Xiao Chun, but because when he saw Xiao Chun come out earlier, apart from the woman by his side, and a huge spiritual beast, he was completely clean. He did not seem to be carrying anything at all. Aside from Xiao Chun, the woman was also empty-handed. The spiritual beast did not carry any baggage either. At that time, he was still puzzled as to why Xiao Chun had run out without completing his mission. In the end, it turned out that there was nothing left for him to take. Just now, when Sita Qitian wanted to speak, he was interrupted a few times. At this moment, he was so depressed that he simply crossed his arms and rolled his eyes, choosing to ignore them. Although Sita Qitian was silent, Fu Qinghao wouldn't let him go so easily. He continued to scold him. Don't think that I don't know your background. The Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce was founded by you. If you really dare to take the amethyst nefarious lotuses for yourself, I'll spread the news immediately. Let's see how you can survive in the immortal cultivation world. Sita Qitian finally couldn't take it anymore after being scolded by Fu Qinghao. He put on an indifferent expression and waved his hand. Do whatever you want. If you want to publicize it, then do it. Anyway, it won't be long before our Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce surpasses the Huanshan Pavilion, and becomes the #1 force in the immortal cultivation world. We'll see who can't survive then. Ha ha ha. You! Shameless villain! Fu Qinghao gritted his teeth in anger. His face turned green and red, but he couldn't do anything to Sita Qitian, who was holding a precious treasure. He could only stare at him angrily, clench his fists and breathe heavily. You idiot! You're actually from the Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce? Xiao Chun was a little surprised to hear Fu Qinghao's words, but he immediately understood. No wonder the Chamber of Commerce used the secular world's rules and regulations. What contract, employment, and compensation? It turned out that it was all done by this kid. Looking at Sita Qitian's complacent look, Xiao Chun frowned and asked coldly, I don't care what organization you're from. I just want to know who you sent to the Green Devil Valley. Was it Cheng Minjing? Quickly let her go. Then hand over the amethyst nefarious lotus. Otherwise, I'll tear down your Chamber of Commerce one by one. Little friend Xiao is right. Quickly hand over the thing. Fu Qinghao immediately echoed loudly, and looked at Xiao Chun approvingly. He thought that Xiao Chun said this to help Huan Chun Pavilion, so he immediately had a good impression of him. Previously, he wanted to kill him after getting the amethyst nefarious lotus, but now it seemed that he could let him live in the future. But what Fu Qinghao didn't know was that Xiao Chun really wanted the amethyst nefarious lotus, but not for Huan Chun Pavilion, but for the Elder Heaven Ancestor. If he was going to reconstruct the body of the Elder Heaven Ancestor, it would be impossible without this kind of treasure. So once he got the amethyst nefarious lotus, Xiao Chun would definitely hand it over to the Elder Heaven Ancestor immediately. Huan Chun Pavilion was nothing. TSK, you don't have the ability to collect the amethyst nefarious lotus, and you want me to give it to you? You can't be stupid, right? Did you get struck by lightning when you were teleported out just now? Sita Qitian sneered and pointed to the wooden house not far behind him. He said in a strange tone, the amethyst nefarious lotus is in that wooden house. If you're not afraid of death, then, ouch. Before Sita Qitian could finish speaking, he was pushed by Xiao Chun. Losing his footing, he fell flat on his face on the ground, stars spinning around in front of him. Xiao Chun passed by Sita Qitian, whose head was covered, and turned to look at him. He did not even bother to look at him, and headed straight for the wooden hut. The immortal cultivators who were originally standing behind Sita Qitian wanted to block Xiao Chun's path, but when they saw what was behind him, fear appeared on their faces. They all retreated to the side and made way for him. At first, Xiao Chun was prepared to kill a few people to suppress the situation. He didn't expect these guys to be so obedient and not dare to act rashly. He couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. But looking at their expressions and glancing out of the corner of his eye, Xiao Chun finally understood what the reason was. It turned out that Fu Qinghao was closely following behind him, probably wanting to go in and get a share of the loot. It seemed that the one these people were really afraid of was the sect master of Huan Chun Pavilion. Xiao Chun thought to himself, I wonder how strong this old fellow is, to actually make people not even have the courage to resist him? But at this time, Xiao Chun couldn't care so much. The wooden house was already in front of him. He directly flew up and kicked open the very simple door. Walking into the wooden house, Xiao Chun saw the crystal shield in the middle of the house at a glance. There was a human-shaped soul floating inside, probably in the shape of a woman. Chapter 1526. Xiao Chun turned his head and saw a huge electronic instrument next to him. The glass carrier in the upper part seemed to be fusing something, and someone was constantly pouring some purple powdery medicinal materials into it. While thinking about what the purple powder was, Xiao Chun inadvertently glanced at some purple petals scattered on the ground. A thought flashed through his mind. It seemed that the powder should be the purified purple mist lotus. Looking at the incredible scene in front of him, Xiao Chun could not help but be confused. He felt very puzzled. How could there be such an advanced electronic instrument in the cultivation world? It was too strange. Moreover, that crystal shield looked very high-end. Who was the female primordial spirit inside? Where did the Dada Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce get this technology? That silly Sita Qitian, did not seem to be the person who could make this kind of thing. Before Xiaochen could figure out all of this, a voice that was gnashing its teeth suddenly resounded behind him. Little friend Xiao. It was that stinking whore who entered the Jade Green Devil Valley to pick the purple mist evil lotus. Let's kill her first, and then take back all the materials. The person who said this was Fu Qinghao. He followed Xiaochen into the room and saw the crystal shield and the electronic instrument. But he was more concerned about the barrels of purple powdery medicinal materials and Tang Tang, who was sitting in the corner in a daze. After seeing the main culprit, who harvested the amethyst nefarious lotus, Fu Qinghao couldn't help but get angry. If it wasn't for this chick, Xiaochen wouldn't have failed to harvest even a single amethyst nefarious lotus. This matter was still on her head. Now that all the purple mist lotus had been refined into powder, and more than half of it had been poured into that strange container, there was basically nothing left on the outside. Fu Qinghao was so angry that a vicious idea suddenly came into his mind. He planned to kill Tang Tang first to vent his anger, and then join forces with Xiaochen to snatch the container. At that time, he would study how to use that inexplicable thing. If he couldn't figure it out, he would smash it, and then pour out all the purple mist lotus powder that he had already poured into it. Then, he would use his sex treasure, the divine dragon cauldron, to refine it again. Thinking of this, Fu Qinghao felt that the plan was perfect. He took the lead and rushed toward Tang Tang. He thought that since Xiaochen was on his side, as long as he made the first move, the kid would definitely follow him. When he made his move, Fu Qinghao was still very proud. He thought that after he killed Tang Tang on the spot, Xiaochen would become a grasshopper on a rope. Their relationship would be so close that he couldn't run away, even if he wanted to. The leader, Situ Haotian, had been focused on the electronic screen. Coincidentally, the female mannequin in the computer had been set up. He turned around and saw this scene. He immediately flew into a rage and shouted, "Fu Qinghao, you old fart, you're simply going too far. You actually dare to attack my people in my territory. Are you tired of living?" In order to prevent Fu Qinghao from destroying the electronic equipment here when he killed Tang Tang, Situ Haotian immediately activated his mind cultivation method and was ready to rush over to stop him. However, when Situ Haotian had just taken a step, Miss Luan suddenly said, "You don't have to do anything. Naturally, someone will deal with Fu Qinghao. You just need to stay here and protect the equipment so that it can operate smoothly." Situ Haotian was wondering who else besides him could restrain the powerful Fu Qinghao. In a blink of an eye, he saw a figure quickly appear in front of Tang Tang. Then, he casually lifted his right leg and aimed at Fu Qinghao's chest, who was constantly approaching, and kicked heavily. Fu Qinghao could not help but be shocked when he saw that the person who blocked him was actually Xiaochen. However, it was too late for him to stop rushing forward. He could only quickly mobilize his primordial qi to protect his chest where his heart was. A hint of gloomy killing intent flashed in his eyes. Fu Qinghao knew that Xiaochen was just a master at the mountain opening stage, and would not pose any threat to him. So he only needed to protect his vital parts and block this attack. However, Xiaochen, who originally thought that he was on the same side as him, actually stepped forward to protect Tang Tang. Although Fu Qinghao did not understand why Xiaochen did this, he had already decided in his heart that when this matter was over, he must eliminate this guy who only paid lip service to him, but secretly opposed him. Crack. While he was thinking about the next plan in his heart, Fu Qinghao suddenly heard a crisp sound of bones breaking, and then a sharp pain came from his heart. Fu Qinghao's expression changed. He slowly looked down in disbelief. He saw that his chest, which was originally protected by primordial qi, had been kicked by the tip of Xiaochen's foot. "Even if you want me to kill someone, you should first figure out the relationship between me and Tang Tang. You even dared to touch my wife. With your stupid IQ, I don't think you need to live anymore," Xiaochen said coldly. Before Fu Qinghao could say anything, Xiaochen injected a light primordial qi into the sole of his foot. He glanced at him, as if he was looking at a dead man, and then suddenly stomped his foot. An enormous strength instantly pushed Fu Qinghao backward. His body was like an arrow that had left the bow, and with a sound, he smashed a hole in the wooden house that had just been built. Then he shot out of the hole, passed through the lake, and set off a series of splashes. Finally, with a clang, he smashed right into the bronze cauldron in the camp of the Fantasy Dust Pavilion. The cauldron was originally standing on the rugged ground, and it had been a little unstable. After being hit by Fu Qinghao, who suddenly fell from the sky, it immediately began to shake, and the shaking became more and more severe. It looked like it was about to fall down. When the surrounding disciples of Huanshan Pavilion saw this, they quickly ran over and wanted to hold the cauldron to prevent it from shaking. However, the strong impact of Fu Qinghao's impact, coupled with the weight of the cauldron itself, made it impossible for those disciples to stop it. The bronze cauldron fell down. First, it mercilessly crushed those disciples into meat paste, and then it smashed unstoppably on the hard ground. A very subtle crack sounded. Suddenly, a faint crack appeared on the bronze cauldron, and then it continued to expand at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few breaths, the cauldron had been covered with cracks. With a bang, it broke into pieces and fell to the ground, turning into pieces of copper fragments. As soon as the cauldron broke, a human-shaped spirit floated out of it. It floated around involuntarily, and its expression looked very flustered. Chapter 1527. The primordial spirit floated in the air and struggled a few times. In the end, it couldn't hold on and was immediately blown away by the wind. It turned into air and instantly disappeared from the calm surface of the lake. It had already turned into ashes. The disciples of Huanshan Pavilion, who were still in the camp, were all dumbfounded. They were so shocked that they couldn't speak. The bronze cauldron contained the primordial spirit of their sect's ancestor. After their ancestor's physical body was destroyed, he had been resting in the cauldron, waiting for the day when he could rebuild his physical body. Originally, when they found out that the amethyst lotus had ripened, they excitedly dragged the divine dragon cauldron to the jade green demonic valley. They were looking forward to getting the amethyst lotus and immediately helping their ancestor's primordial spirit to rebuild his physical body. When their ancestor regained his physical body and came out again, Huanshan Pavilion's position in the immortal cultivation world would be even more unshakable. However, just now, their beautiful wish could no longer be realized, because they saw their ancestor's primordial spirit dissipate in the air. The elders of the Fantasy Dust Pavilion all had ugly expressions on their faces. They could see the situation very clearly in their hearts. Sect leader Fu Qinghao was already dead, and the ancestral master was also gone. This news would soon spread to every corner of the immortal cultivation world, as if it had grown wings. At that time, the sects and clans that had been following behind the illusionary Dust Pavilion covetously would immediately swarm over and swallow up the leaderless illusionary Dust Pavilion cleanly, leaving not even a scrap behind. Thinking of this, the few elders looked at each other and immediately turned to leave silently. They had to find a partner who could give them the most benefits before the news spread. The disciples of Huanshan Pavilion seemed to understand something when they saw this. They hurriedly followed their followers and left. Wu Gang and Dou Ling were nowhere to be found. The once famous number one sect in the immortal cultivation world had instantly collapsed and no longer existed. Xiao Chen laughed coldly as he looked at the chaotic Fantasy Dust Pavilion not far away. He shrugged his shoulders without a care in the world. The reason why Xiao Chen wanted to kick Fu Qinghao to death just now was that he thought this guy was really a bastard. He had tricked him into the Green Devil Valley to collect herbs, and when he came out, he did not ask whether he was dead or alive, but only focused on the purple mist black lotus. The point was that he also wanted to kill Tang Tang, so he might as well just kill her. As for the chain reaction that followed, it was not something that Xiao Chen could predict. Tang Tang didn't know what had happened. She only felt her vision blurred, and then Xiao Chen, whom she missed day and night, suddenly appeared in front of her. At first Tang Tang thought she was dreaming. She rubbed her eyes hard and stood up to grab Xiao Chen's arm. Only when she felt his body temperature did she know it was true. She could not help but ask with excitement and concern. Xiao Chun, why are you here? Are you all right? I'm fine. I'm in good health, and I'm eating well. Feeling the warmth coming from his arm, Xiao Chun smiled slightly and asked, Tang Tang, how did you get caught? Have you seen Minjing? Xiao Chun originally thought that it should be Cheng Minjing who was locked in the wooden house, but he did not expect it to be Tang Tang. The whole wooden house was only so big. Xiao Chun had looked around, and there was no trace of Miss Tang. At this time, Situ Haotian was also very shocked. The way he looked at Xiao Chun had become a little cautious. It should be known that Fu Qinghao, as the leader of Fantasy Dust Pavilion, was extremely strong, almost at the same level as him. He did not expect that Xiao Chun could kick him away with a simple kick. This was enough to prove that this guy's strength was already above him. What should I do now? Were they supposed to just watch as he stole all the materials? Will all my hard work in the past few days be in vain? A trace of haze flashed in Situ Haotian's eyes. Impossible. Even if your strength is superior, so what? Today I came prepared. I must make you kneel at my feet and cry and admit your mistake. I haven't seen her yet. Tang Tang shook her head, pointed to the outside and said, I'm also waiting for Situ Qitian to release Cheng Minjing. He promised me that as long as I can bring back the purple mist lotus, he will let me and Cheng Minjing regain our freedom. But then he said that he would wait until they finish their business. How about you catch him and ask him? Tang Tang stayed in the wooden house to wait for Cheng Minjing. She did not expect that before Miss Tang came, Xiao Chun came. Naturally, Xiao Chun did not want to wait, so he nodded and was about to go out to find Situ Qitian. As a result, this guy ran in happily and shouted as he ran, Godfather! Godfather Haotian! Fantasy Dust Pavilion is finished. Their sect leader and ancestral master were dead. From now on, the cultivation world will be our world. Situ Qitian had been pushed to the ground by Xiao Chun earlier. After he got up with great difficulty, he was about to rush into the wooden hut when he was startled by Fu Qinghao, who had been sent flying. Then, he saw the scene of Fu Qinghao crashing into the bronze cauldron. Seeing that Fantasy Dust Pavilion was in a mess, Situ Qitian simply did not enter the door. He stayed outside the door and observed for a while. It was not until he saw the other party leave in a hurry that he ran in happily to report the news. Whirled my ass. Xiao Chun interrupted Situ Qitian's good news, narrowed his eyes and said, What did you just shout? He is your godfather, so he is Situ Haotian, right? Situ Qitian could not help but be shocked when he saw Xiao Chun standing in front of him. He subconsciously took a step back, but suddenly realized why he should step back. Just as he was about to muster the courage to refute, he was interrupted by Xiao Chun again. I don't care how messy your private lives are, and I don't care if you are godfather, godson or godfather. Xiao Chun looked at Situ Qitian coldly and said, In short, you better release Cheng Minjing and hand over all the medicinal powder made from the purple mist lotus. Then I might consider letting you live. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Chun suddenly seemed to sense something. His gaze turned to the female primordial spirit in the middle of the room, inside the crystal shield. Although he could not see her face clearly, he could clearly feel that she was also looking at him coldly. Xiao Chun's heart skipped a beat, and a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. This fellow should be the mastermind behind all this. It was also because she needed the purple mist lotus to shape her body. Otherwise, with the intelligence of two idiots, Situ Qitian and Situ Haotian, it was impossible for them to create such a sophisticated electronic device. Chapter 1528. Xiao Chun, for you to be able to come to this place, you are amazing, but your ability is limited to this. Situ Haotian coldly snorted, secretly winking at his subordinates behind him, and then fiercely said, I want to see what kind of ability you have to take away the purple mist black lotus from my hands. Oh, since you are so kind to invite me, then I will dig out your eyeballs and take a good look. As soon as Xiao Chun's voice fell, a thick true qi suddenly appeared, gradually covering his entire body. In the next moment, Xiao Chun revealed his cultivation at the peak of the sea-splitting stage. Although it looked calm on the surface, it was actually a violent and unrestrained pressure. It was released from Xiao Chen's body and heavily surrounded Situ Haoyan and Situ Qitian. Cough cough. Situ Qitian's strength was the weakest, and as soon as he was suppressed by Xiao Chen's coercion, he immediately felt as if his neck was being strangled by a pair of invisible hands. His face revealed a horrified expression, and his legs softened as he fell to the ground, involuntarily coughing. Situ Haoyan's breathing also stagnated, and his expression was very ugly, but he still waved his hand with difficulty, and then took a deep breath, and shouted towards Xiao Chen, who was approaching step by step. Xiao Chen, you stop. If you dare to take another step, don't ever think of seeing your mother again. My mother? She is in your hands. Xiao Chen had thought that Situ Haoyan would beg for mercy, and would even curse, but he never thought that he would say such a sentence, and could not help but be stunned. The corner of Situ Haoyan's mouth carried a trace of an evil smile, as he pointed behind Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen turned his head to look, and saw a few staff members dressed in white strenuously, carrying out a transparent box from the side door of the wooden house. Inside the box lay a beautiful young woman whose eyes were tightly shut, and who seemed to be unconscious. Although Xiao Chen's mother had disappeared when he was very young, and he had not seen her for a long time, but the moment he saw the beautiful young woman, Xiao Chen immediately judged that this must be his closest relative. However, the beautiful young woman was in a deep coma at this time, and could not feel the outside world. What did you do to her? Xiao Chen was really angry this time. He did not think that his mother, who he thought was missing, was actually kidnapped by Situ Haoyan, and this had already touched his bottom line. Hey, how is it, are you afraid? Situ Haoyan felt proud and elated. He proudly walked to the side of the transparent box, patted the surface of the box and said, Right now your mother has only fainted. She is still safe and sound, but the best part is yet to come. Xiao Chen tightly clenched his fists, and silently stared at Situ Haoyan. If looks could kill, Situ Haoyan would have been cut into pieces by now. Ignoring Xiao Chen's murderous glare, Situ Haoyan calmly took out a remote control from his bosom, and waved it in his hand. He sneered coldly and said, Do you see the red button on it? As long as I gently press it, the celestial device containing your mother will explode with a bang. Do you want to try and see whether your body is faster, or my fingers are faster? Xiao Chen, don't be impulsive, that bastard is shameless, and he will certainly do what he said. Tang's complexion changed, and she quickly pulled Xiao Chen to appease him. Although the purple nefarious lotus has been harvested by me, it won't take long for it to grow again. When that time comes, we can go in and harvest again. There is no need to take this risk, and please don't hurt Auntie. Tang's voice was a little choked, and she felt very guilty. When she was harvesting, why didn't she leave some? Why did she insist on taking all the purple nefarious lotus back? She did not expect that Xiao Chen would be tricked. Feeling Tang's guilt, Xiao Chen gently patted her cold little hand, indicating that it was not her fault, and that she did not need to bear the responsibility. Ha ha ha. Little girl, you are too naive. Situ Haoyan suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed, and said with a proud face, Let me kindly remind you that the purple nefarious lotus growth cycle is as long as tens of thousands of years, and this thing's seed is in the stamen. You have already taken all of them out, and it is impossible to grow new ones. You should give up as soon as possible. At this time, Situ Haoyan was very relaxed. In his opinion, as long as Xiao Chen's mother was still in his hands, it was equal to holding a crucial bargaining chip in the confrontation between the two armies. And Xiao Chen would certainly not dare to act rashly. When he successfully molded the body, and then let Queen Wan obtain a new body, she would certainly be able to easily kill Xiao Chen. Oh, it is impolite not to reciprocate. Since you have given me such a kind reminder, then I will also give you some useful advice. Xiao Chen looked at Situ Haoyan coldly and said, What else can you suggest? Situ Haoyan glanced at Xiao Chen contemptuously, thinking that he was struggling on his deathbed. Xiao Chen raised his right hand in the air, gently snapped his fingers, and then said with a blank expression, I suggest you enjoy the feeling of touching things with your fingers, because from now on, you will never experience it again. What the hell? Situ Haotian was slightly stunned, completely unable to understand what Xiao Chen meant by these words. He thought that Xiao Chen must be bluffing, so he snorted very disdainfully, not taking it to heart at all. Idiot! Be careful behind you. Godfather, there is a sword behind you, get out of the way. Just as Situ Haotian was planning to humiliate Xiao Chen, Miss Luan's angry voice and Situ Qitian's anxious urging voice sounded at the same time. From their point of view, they could clearly see that a sharp sword suddenly appeared behind Situ Haotian, and the hilt of the sword was also emitting a black fog, which gradually formed the shape of a hand, tightly gripping the sword, and fiercely chopped down at Situ Haotian's arm. However, the two's warning was a step too late. Although Situ Haotian heard their shouts, and his heart was alarmed, his body did not have time to react before he heard a burst of sound. Only to hear a kacha sound, Situ Haotian's right hand, which was holding the remote control, was instantly cut off at the shoulder. His cheek was also dyed red by the blood that gushed out, and a piercing pain shot from his shoulder to his head. Ah! Situ Haotian could not help but scream, his left hand clutching his right shoulder that revealed the white bone, powerlessly kneeling on the ground. Fortunately, although he was tortured by the pain, he still remembered to use Yuan Qi to seal the artery in his right shoulder, so as not to lose too much blood and die. Chapter 1529. Turning his head with difficulty, Situ Haotian finally saw the culprit. It turned out that he had been struck from behind by a strange black mist wielding a sharp sword. At this moment, this thing had an evil smile on its face as it swayed back and forth in the air. It didn't look like a primordial spirit, but more like a ghost. And little demon, keep an eye on this idiot. If any one of them dares to touch that remote control, you know what to do. Xiao Chen instructed indifferently. Then, he gave little demon a look that said, "You know what I mean. Just wait and see. I promise to kill one if they come. If two come, I'll kill a pair." And Xiaomo cackled. He raised his flying sword and stood between Situ Haotian and the crystal coffin, glaring at the others present. Seeing that Xiaomo had understood his meaning, Xiao Chen nodded and turned to walk in the direction of the electronic instrument. Because he saw that the purple mist lotus powder had begun to dissolve and was slowly being synthesized, he wanted to snatch the material back as soon as possible. "Stop right there." Miss Luan was also anxious and screamed in a sharp voice. As soon as the voice fell, Miss Luan's spirit began to emit a faint white light. The spirit that looked illusory and faintly transparent began to condense, gradually growing hands and feet, and the face became clear. Gradually, it became an existence that was infinitely close to a physical existence. Xiao Chen first glanced at the LCD screen and found that this thing had an extremely complicated operation interface. He estimated that he would not be able to deal with this thing for a while, so he simply turned his head and stared coldly at the crystal shield. "I almost forgot that there is still you." Xiao Chen looked at Miss Luan's petite body that was gradually taking shape and threatened in a deep voice. "If you don't want to disappear like that primordial spirit in the Fantasy Dust Pavilion earlier, you better tell me how to operate this device immediately. Otherwise, I'll smash your crystal barrier into a pile of broken glass." "Ridiculous. Do you think I really need this crystal shield?" Miss Luan sneered, clenched her fist and waved it gently, directly punching a hole in the crystal shield in front of her. Then her body turned into mist again and floated out of the hole. Xiao Chen's brows furrowed slightly. This female essence soul seemed to be a little more powerful than the one in the Fantasy Dust Pavilion previously. Although he looked thin and small, he was able to break the barrier with just a light punch. His strength was not to be underestimated. "Hiss. She is." As Xiao Chen was observing Miss Luan, Elder Heaven Ancestor suddenly let out a gasp. "What's wrong, Elder Heaven Ancestor? Do you know her?" Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows. He felt that the Elder Heaven Ancestor's reaction was a little strange. He had never seen him like this before. "Oh, I do." The Elder Heaven Ancestor was silent for a while, then said bitterly, "And it's not a small grudge. I was beaten into a primordial spirit state by her, and ended up in the mortal world." "What?" Xiao Chen was shocked. He did not expect that this ordinary, thin woman was the enemy of the Elder Heaven Ancestor. At that time, I should have seriously injured her, but I don't know how she turned into a primordial spirit state. The Elder Heaven Ancestor paused, then added, "But her strength is indeed very strong. I have no way to determine her current cultivation. You must be careful." Before Xiao Chen had time to answer, Miss Luan was already in front of him. She said coldly, "My primordial spirit is much stronger than you think. How can that ant from the Fantasy Dust Pavilion compare to me? I don't need the protection of the container at all. Staying in there is only to recover my vitality and strengthen my primordial spirit body. In that case, I would like to feel how powerful your primordial spirit is." Xiao Chen could not be bothered to talk to the Elder Heaven Ancestor anymore. He shouted angrily, tiptoed lightly on the ground, and leaped into the air. He condensed a cyclone in his right palm, and fiercely pushed it towards Miss Luan's primordial spirit. You are Xiao Chen, right? I've heard of your name for a long time." Miss Luan smiled faintly. She did not dodge until Xiao Chen's palm wind was in front of her. Suddenly, her body turned into mist again, and she easily dodged the palm wind. Without waiting for Xiao Chen to change his move, Miss Luan's body flashed, and she floated behind him. She instantly condensed into a solid body, and quickly kicked him. She said coldly, "I really did not expect you to come here, but this is the end. Die." Boom. Xiao Chen's palm strike shattered the crystal shield into pieces, but at the same time, he was kicked down from the air by Miss Luan, and a large pit was formed on the ground. The whole wooden house was suddenly filled with dust, blocking everyone's vision. Xiao Chen. Upon seeing this, Tang Tang was very nervous and hurriedly shouted. She was about to run to check on Xiao Chen's condition, but she vaguely saw a figure suddenly flashed out of the big pit and rushed towards Miss Luan like a lightning bolt, fighting with her again. Tang Tang had just breathed a sigh of relief, but her expression changed again. The current situation was obviously very unfavorable for Xiao Chen. Every time he wanted to attack, Miss Luan would directly turn into mist, causing all his moves to fail. Then, she would take advantage of the time when his moves were exhausted to condense into a solid body again to attack him. Xiao Chen had never encountered such a situation. After a few rounds, he had a lot of wounds on his body, and his movements were not as fast as before. He was somewhat unable to cope with it, and he gradually showed signs of declining. The more Tang Tang watched, the more anxious she became. She was racking her brains to think of a way to help Xiao Chen deal with Miss Luan, when she suddenly heard footsteps approaching from outside the door. Tang Tang thought that it was the reinforcements of the Heaven-Earth Association that had been left outside, and immediately became very nervous. She immediately assumed an offensive posture, intending to kill the person who had come, and then find a way to join forces with Xiao Chen to kill Miss Luan. "Ha! Tang Tang, why are you here?" As soon as Hong Zhu stepped into the wooden house, he saw Tang Tang standing solemnly there, glaring at him with a murderous look. He could not help but blurt out in astonishment, "Hong Zhu, why are you here?" Tang Tang was about to launch her attack, but when she saw that the person who had come turned out to be Hong Zhu, she hastily withdrew her attack and asked in a very surprised manner, "I'm going to ask you, what are you doing here?" Could it be? When Hong Zhu saw Tang Tang's posture, his expression immediately became strange. Could it be that she was in cahoots with Sita Tian? Seeing Hong Zhu's suspicious eyes, Tang Tang immediately understood that he had misunderstood her identity. She quickly explained, "Hong Zhu, you think too much. I was also captured by them. This is all Sita Tian and Situ Haoyan's plot. They first captured Cheng Minjing, and then used her to threaten me, forcing me to collect the purple mist black lotus. So I had no choice but to do it." Chapter 1530. Really? Then, Hong Zhu narrowed his eyes and did not quite believe what Tang Tang said. When he was about to continue asking, Nie Xiaoyu, who had just entered the door behind him, quickly said, Tang Tang didn't lie, Sister Hongzhu. I was also locked up with Miss Cheng Minjing before. They also forced me to pick the purple Miss Black Lotus, but I didn't succeed. Tang Tang nodded again and cast a grateful look at Nie Xiaoyu and Li Xianer next to her. I'm sorry, Tang Tang. It seems that I thought too much. Hongzhu smiled awkwardly and apologized with a bit of embarrassment. It doesn't matter. Let's not talk about this first. Xiao Chen is still. Tang Tang waved her hand. Before she could finish her words, a muffled bang was heard. Then, Xiao Chen's body flew out through the big hole that Fu Qinghao had just smashed. Miss Luan also turned into mist again and chased him out of the house. What the hell is that? How dare she hit my husband, Xiao Chen? Seeing that Xiao Chen was actually beaten, Hongzhu was so angry that his temples throbbed, and he felt that his blood vessels were about to burst. He immediately waved to Tang Tang and the other women and angrily said, Sisters, Xiao Chen's husband is being bullied. We can't just ignore it. Everyone come with me. Let's join hands and destroy this thing that's neither human nor ghost. We won't stop until she's dead. Hongzhu, don't be impulsive. Tang Tang quickly pulled Hongzhu's hand and said with a solemn expression, Even Xiao Chen is not her match. If we rush forward, not only will we not be of any help, but it will also easily distract Xiao Chen. Let's not go and make trouble. This, Hongzhu gritted his teeth with some reluctance and stared at the scene of the two people fighting outside, but he did not say anything more. After calming down and thinking about it, Hongzhu also understood that Tang Tang's words did have some truth to them. It was him who was too hot-blooded, but when he saw Xiao Chen being beaten to the ground by the female ghost again and again, and he couldn't give any help, Hongzhu's heart was filled with mixed feelings, and his mood was extremely complicated. On one hand, he was constantly cursing that hateful female soul in his heart, but on the other hand, he felt a deep sense of self-blame. Hongzhu was now very regretful. Why had he been so playful and lazy before, only thinking about being intimate with Xiao Chen, instead of improving his own abilities and working hard to become stronger? After being kicked by Miss Luan again, Xiao Chen's body smashed into a tree trunk, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. After being kicked several times in a row, Xiao Chen had realized that Miss Luan had not shown her real strength, but had been using ordinary punches and kicks to tease him, just like a cat playing with a mouse. She would play with him first, and when she was done playing with him, she would use her big move to kill him in one fell swoop. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Xiao Chen did not launch another attack, but first circulated his yuan qi to check his body. He found that there were no other problems for the time being, except for a few bruises on the surface of his body and some slight damage to his internal organs. Staring at Miss Luan, who was leisurely and contented not far away, Xiao Chen asked in his spiritual sea with a bitter face, Elder Heaven Ancestor, this is not the way to go. Sooner or later, I will be beaten to death by her. Since you have fought with her, do you know if she has any weaknesses? Do you have a suitable idea to deal with her? It would be best if you could directly blast her to pieces. If I could blast her to pieces, would I still need to stay in your spiritual sea, waiting for my body to be reconstructed? Elder Tian reprimanded in a bad mood. You only know how to daydream in broad daylight. It's obvious that you're not strong enough, yet you're still thinking of killing others in an instant. I can't even see through her cultivation, so how could I see through her weakness? Then what should I do? Xiao Chen frowned and lamented. This old woman is too ruthless. I can't hit her, and I can't dodge her either. I'm completely countered by her. There's nothing I can do. Elder Heaven Ancestor pondered for a while, then suddenly gave a suggestion. Why don't you try to use the 9 nether flame to burn her? Since she is now in her nascent soul state, she should be very afraid of the unusual flame. Nethery, I will go to distract her. You find a chance to attack her. Xiao Chen made a prompt decision, quickly ordering in his spiritual sea. Then his feet stomped on the ground, and his speed suddenly skyrocketed. Like a ferocious cheetah, he dashed toward Miss Luan. In the process of dashing, Xiao Chen's left hand quietly threw out a wisp of flame, and the cyclone in his right hand instantly became stronger, fiercely smashing toward Miss Luan's face. Ha ha ha, are you too stupid or too naive? Don't you realize that your attack can't hit me? Miss Luan saw that Xiao Chun was actually using the same trick, and the corner of her mouth curved into a disdainful smile. Lady Luan's figure gradually became blurry. Just as Xiao Chun's fist wind was about to touch her face, she turned into mist with a whoo sound and floated in the air like an illusion. Xiao Chun's fist immediately hit empty air. Luckily, he usually trained, so his body's balance was excellent, and he did not fall because of the inertia of rushing forward. However, when he adjusted his center of gravity, he keenly felt a faint murderous aura quickly approaching. You are really too weak. This queen is too lazy to continue wasting time with you. Go to hell, Xiao Chun. Miss Luan, who had turned into a mist, suddenly appeared on the left side of Xiao Chun. She quickly condensed her nascent soul, preparing to turn into a solid body and kill Xiao Chun in one blow. However, when he repeated the same trick this time, before Miss Luan could completely condense into a solid form, a ball of bluish-purple flame suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Chun out of thin air, and quickly flew towards her. Miss Luan's slightly illusory face suddenly changed, and she was very surprised, blurting out, "This is Nine Nether Flame." Ah! There was only a scream, and before Miss Luan could dodge, the bluish-purple flame quickly cut through her arm that had not yet condensed. After a faint sizzling sound, a disgusting smell quickly spread in the air. It smelled like a rotting animal corpse that had been burnt. It was extremely stinky. It really is the Nine Nether Flame. Looking at her right arm that was burned, Miss Luan could not help but burn with anger. She stared at Xiao Chun and said fiercely, "I didn't expect you to be able to subdue such a good treasure. It is simply a reckless waste of God's gift. Stop talking nonsense. Quickly release Cheng Minjing. Otherwise, I will let the Nine Nether Flame burn you, old woman, for 3 days and 3 nights, until there is nothing left of you." Xiao Chun saw that the Nine Nether Flame was really effective, and his spirit was lifted, immediately retorting. Miss Luan was suddenly so angry that her nose was crooked, but when she heard Xiao Chun mention Cheng Minjing, she rolled her eyes and let out a pretentious laugh. "Do you think you are great because you have the Nine Nether Flame? This queen has a way to get rid of you effortlessly." Chapter 1531. Xiao Chun frowned slightly. Before he could say anything, Miss Luan materialized. She waved her hand and said coldly, "Turn around and take a look. These are the people you have been thinking about day and night." Xiao Chun subconsciously turned around and saw more than 10 people suddenly emerge from the bushes not far away. From their dull expressions and empty eyes, these people should all be biohumans. One of the biohumans was holding a chain in his hand. On the other end of the chain was Cheng Minjing, who was tied up by a rope magic tool. However, at this time, her mouth had been sealed with tape, so she could not speak at all. Cheng Minjing obviously wanted to say something to Xiao Chun urgently. However, no matter how hard she tried, she could only make whimpering sounds. She could not say anything. "Young mistress," Xiao Chun shouted. He clenched his fists tightly and rushed forward with large strides. Just as he was about to save Cheng Minjing, he saw that she revealed an extremely anxious expression. Her gaze kept drifting over to the reincarnated incarnate. Xiao Chun followed Cheng Minjing's gaze and looked at the biohuman in surprise. Suddenly his body trembled. This biohuman holding the chain, isn't he Cheng Minjing's uncle, Cheng Zhongqian? At this time, Cheng Zhongqian's expression was stiff. He held the chain tightly, as if he did not recognize Cheng Minjing at all. In the past, he used to like this niece of his the most. Looking at Cheng Minjing's pained and helpless expression, Xiao Chun's gaze became a little sour. He moved his eyes away with difficulty and looked at the side of Cheng Zhongqian. That familiar face. "Isn't that my father, Xiaofeng?" "Dad," Xiao Chun called out, but there was no response. Xiaofeng's expression was the same as Cheng Zhongqian's, cold and indifferent. He did not respond to Xiao Chun's call at all. Looking at his unconscious father standing in front of him, and then thinking of his mother, who was unconscious in the crystal box in the wooden house, Xiao Chun felt as if thousands of ants were gnawing at his heart. Guilt and discomfort tormented his soul. He had finally found his parents, but Xiao Chun did not feel happy at all. If he had found the clues earlier and found them earlier, would they have suffered less pain? Dad! Mom! Just as Xiao Chun's heart was in turmoil, a sorrowful cry suddenly came from the direction of the wooden house. Tang Tang stumbled out of the wooden house and ran in the direction of the cyborgs. As she ran, she shouted, "Mom, Dad, what's wrong with you? Wake up. I'm your daughter, Tang Tang." It turned out that among the cyborgs, other than Xiao Feng and Cheng Zhongqian, Tang Tang's parents were also among them. However, their expressions were lifeless, and they did not respond to Tang Tang's call. Tang Tang was so anxious that tears streamed down her face. However, no matter how she shouted, she could not wake up her biological parents. Hearing Tang Tang's shout, Xiao Chun immediately woke up. He remembered that he was still in the middle of a battle. Immediately, his body tensed up and he was ready to fight. He glanced in the direction of the cyborgs again, and was shocked to find that almost all of them had the strength of the first level of the sea-splitting stage. Xiao Chun could not help but be shocked. He did not expect Miss Luan to be so powerful. Even these cyborgs without self-consciousness could be raised to the sea-splitting stage. If these people were placed in the world of immortal cultivation, wouldn't it cause a huge earthquake? You are responsible for watching over Cheng Minjing. The rest of you attack together. Kill Xiao Chun and those girls. Miss Luan enjoyed the chaotic scene of Xiao Chun and the others for a while. Then, she maintained her physical form and floated in the air leisurely. She gave a few simple orders to the cyborgs and coldly watched the upcoming show with her arms crossed. The cyborgs received the orders and immediately took action. They pounced on Xiao Chun and the others. "Dad, Mom, do you recognize me? Hurry up and come over." Seeing that the cyborgs were moving, Tang Tang immediately went forward and prepared to rescue her parents. Seeing this, Xiao Chun's heart sank. He immediately used his movement technique and flashed to Tang Tang's side. He grabbed her waist and quickly left in the direction of the wooden house. However, because of the haste, one of the cyborgs slapped him hard on the back. "Tang Tang, be careful. They have been injected with the drug by that she-devil. They are now cyborgs. They can't hear anything you say." Xiao Chun endured the pain coming from his back and shouted at Tang Tang, "Why are you stopping me? Think of a way to save them. They are my parents." Tang Tang cried and shouted anxiously. She constantly struggled and hit Xiao Chun. She wanted to break free and rush to find her parents. However, she was still held tightly by Xiao Chun. She could not move even half a step forward. Xiao Chun quickly brought Tang Tang to Hongzhu. Then he held her shoulders and shook her hard. He shouted, "Tang Tang, don't be silly. Their brains have been controlled by the drug. They have no self-consciousness at all. Just like you when you became a cyborgs. Do you want to go and die? They will really kill you." Hearing Xiao Chun's words, Tang Tang looked at her parents' lifeless eyes. She could not help but feel a lump in her throat and burst into tears again. In fact, she understood the reason. It was just that she could not suppress her excitement after seeing her parents who had been missing for a long time. That was why she had done such a reckless thing. "Hongzhu, take Tang Tang and Nie Xiaoyu to a safe place. The farther the better." Xiao Chun was also very sad. However, he still gently pushed Tang Tang and sent her to Hongzhu's side. Then he solemnly warned her. "Yes, I understand. My husband Xiao Chun, be careful." Hongzhu nodded sensibly. He immediately pulled Tang Tang and the other two women, turned around, and ran in the direction of the forest. Although he did not know where the safe place was, he could only take it one step at a time. Hongzhu's first judgment was to get as far away from that female spirit as possible. TSK, I really didn't expect this. Xiao Chun, you're actually an infatuated man." Young Lady Luan pretended to clap her hands softly, and a cruel smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. "Since you have the guts to face all of this alone, I would like to see if you dare to lay your hands on your own family for the sake of those women." After saying that, Miss Luan gestured to the cyborgs on the ground and rearranged their attack methods. Then, she casually dodged the attack of the fire of the underworld. After receiving the order, Cheng Zhongqian handed the chain that bound Cheng Minjing to another cyborgs. Then, together with Xiao Feng and Tang Tang's parents, the four of them rushed toward Xiao Chen. Chapter 1532. Xiao Chen clenched his teeth. Looking at the four biohumans who were in a daze, he slowly lowered his raised fist. These people were the people they were most familiar with and closest to. He didn't expect Miss Luan to be so vicious that she would use such a sinister trick. The only thing that Xiao Chen was glad about was that the strength of the four biohumans was not too high. With his cultivation at the peak of the sea-splitting stage, even if he didn't fight back, he could easily dodge their attacks. Although he was occasionally grazed by the wind from their palms, Xiao Chen didn't think it was a big deal. As long as it wasn't enough to kill him, it didn't matter. The most important thing now was to find a way to wake the biohumans up or stop their attacks, so that they would lose their combat power. Ha ha ha. Xiao Chen, I didn't expect you to have such a day. Situ Qitian, who had bandaged Situ Haotian's arm, happened to run out of the wooden house at this time. After seeing this scene, he laughed proudly and said, "You must feel great being chased by your father all over the street, right? I will remember this scene for the rest of my life." After watching for a while with his legs shaking, Situ Qitian realized that Xiao Chen was still able to dodge left and right while being surrounded by four people. He was rarely at a disadvantage. He felt a little displeased, so he pointed at the other biohumans who were standing still and instructed, "You guys don't just stand there. Hurry up and take care of Xiao Chen together. Beat him until he's dead." The biohumans also obeyed Situ Qitian's orders. Except for the biohuman who was guarding Cheng Minjing, the others immediately joined the battle after receiving the order. Xiao Chen, who was originally quite relaxed, was suddenly under a lot more pressure. Although these biohumans had no consciousness, they still had the fighting instinct, and they were very flexible. Every time Xiao Chen was about to make a move, Xiao Feng, Cheng Zhongfan, and Tang Tang's parents would take the initiative to rush in front of him. Left with no choice, Xiao Chen could only withdraw his attack. However, just as he was about to unleash his new attack, the other biohumans would rush forward and attack him together with Xiao Feng and the others. In a moment of carelessness, Xiao Chen suffered a few palm strikes in succession, yet he didn't dare to retaliate, causing Situ Qitian, who was watching from nearby, to be overjoyed. He danced with joy and roared with laughter as he pointed at Xiao Chen and ridiculed without the slightest scruple. "Xiao Chen, Xiao Chen, you've been looking for a father for so long, yet you didn't expect that your father would beat you up the moment he saw you, right? It means that as a son, you are too unfilial. Motherf ***. Situ Qitian, you're having a good time, aren't you?" Xiao Chen finally couldn't take it anymore. Although his internal organs felt like they were churning, he still gritted his teeth and released his mental strength, instantly controlling Situ Haotian, who had lost too much blood and was already a little fuzzy in the wooden house. Situ Haotian's expression froze, and then he picked up the flying sword with his left hand that was still intact. He quietly snuck out of the house, came behind Situ Haotian, raised the flying sword, and slashed down hard. Situ Qitian was watching excitedly as Xiao Chen was beaten up. Suddenly, there was a burst of wind behind his ear, and he immediately realized that the situation was not good. Alarm bells went off in his heart, and he quickly lay down on the ground and rolled like a lazy donkey, trying to avoid the attack coming from behind. However, Situ Qitian's dodging action was still a little too late. Although he rolled on the ground, his calf was still cut by the flying sword, and there was a deep wound, causing him to grimace in pain. Situ Qitian turned around to see who was attacking him, and when he saw who it was, he immediately cursed angrily. "Godfather, why did you cut me? Are you ***king crazy?" Situ Haotian's eyes were empty, and his expression sluggish. He simply ignored his godson's curses, and continued to chase after Situ Qitian with his flying sword, slashing at him without any pattern. Ouch! Situ Qitian was caught off guard, and was slashed a few more times. For a moment, he screamed and hurriedly dodged around with his hands on his head. He even grabbed his unrelated subordinates, and used them as shields to defend against his godfather's attacks. Xiao Chun sneered and said sarcastically to the panicking Sita Qitian. How is it? Sita Qitian, the feeling of being chased by your father and slashing at the streets must be very satisfying, right? It shows that you haven't served me well enough. Sita Qitian, who was covering his head and scurrying like a rat, had no time to answer. The attack of the biohumans came at Xiao Chun again. After dodging the wind generated by Xiao Feng's fists, Xiao Chun was slapped twice by Tang Tang's parents. Before he could recover, Xiao Feng and Cheng Zhongqian's fists came at him again. Xiao Chun couldn't dodge in time, and was hit again, and was directly sent flying. When he was about to fall to the ground, Xiao Chun took the opportunity to stretch out his right palm and support himself on the ground. He took advantage of the momentum and rolled 1.5 times on the ground before he managed to offset the impact. In the end, just as he steadied his feet, the 3 biohumans once again ran toward Xiao Chun. Xiao Feng, who was in the lead, acted as if he had a deep grudge against his own son. He mercilessly kicked Xiao Chun, while the other 2 took the opportunity to swing their fists. It seemed as if they were determined to kill Xiao Chun. What the F***ck? Dad, you're too good at using this combination of skills. You're not leaving your son a chance to live at all. Xiao Chun smiled helplessly and barely dodged the joint attack of the 3 people. He took the opportunity to glance at the situation of the flame of the underworld from the corner of his eye, wanting to know how the battle was going on over there. In the end, it would have been fine if Xiao Chun had not taken a look, but when he did, he nearly vomited a mouthful of blood. Just now, Xiao Chun had already noticed that when Miss Luan turned into a solid body, no matter how the flame of the underworld attacked, it could not cause any substantial damage to her. Only when she turned into a primordial spirit could the flame of the underworld have a chance to burn her. Originally, Xiao Chun hoped that the flame of the underworld could take the opportunity to attack when Miss Luan wanted to change her position and turn into a mist. He did not expect that Miss Luan would not give it a chance at all. She had been standing steadily on the side in her solid state, watching the battle on Xiao Chun's side with interest. The flame of the underworld was carrying out futile attacks on Miss Luan on the side. It either created a large number of clones to sweep over, or it directly rushed at her aggressively. However, no matter how it attacked, it had no effect. It looked like an ant trying to shake a tree. Hee Xiao Chun, it seems that you usually do not train this little thing well. Seeing that Xiao Chun was looking at her, Miss Luan sneered and said, Such a boring attack. I am too lazy to even dodge. Why don't you let it save its strength? Nethery, think of some other way to deal with her. Xiao Chun shouted helplessly. Your physical attack is useless against her. You have to find a way to turn her into a primordial spirit. F***ck. Chapter 1533. Thick smoke billowed from the blasted blackened land. Some broken human limbs fell from the sky and scattered around the big pit, emitting an unpleasant burnt smell. The whole scene was as horrible as the end of the world. This time, a little demon was dumbfounded. If she broke free, she would hurt the 2 people who grabbed the sword. But if she didn't let go, she would lose her fighting power and couldn't help Xiao Chun. Don't move, and little demon. Don't hurt them. When Xiao Chun saw this, he immediately endured the pain and roared. If her parents were hurt, she would be sad for the rest of her life. A breeze gently swept across the lake, gradually blowing away the smoke caused by the explosion. A figure slowly emerged from the dust. Not knowing whether it was because the power of the explosion was too strong, or the sound wave temporarily deafened people, no one around the wooden house spoke for a long time. Xiao Chun lay on the ground, staring at the explosion. For a moment he couldn't react. This voice seemed a little familiar. Little Nethery, stop. Don't worry about me. Continue to fight with that spirit until you destroy her. Xiao Chun couldn't stand up for a moment. He looked at the flame of the underworld approaching quickly with his eyes wide open. He was burning with anxiety and shouted at the top of his voice. Really, what the hell is this place? There isn't even an exit. After a while, a soft and neutral voice suddenly came from the center of the explosion. Just as Xiao Chun was distracted to teach the flame of the underworld a lesson, More than a dozen biohumans surrounded him again and launched a new round of fighting, overwhelming punches and kicks. Those biohumans who were standing beside Xiaochen all swarmed toward Xiaochen at this time, with murderous looks on their faces. It was obvious that they were going to kill him. However, the flame of the underworld could not listen to Xiaochen's orders at this time. It shot over and gradually fell in midair. The huge fireball was still expanding outward, and even the surrounding air was affected. The temperature sometimes soared, and sometimes plummeted. It could be seen that it had completely thrown caution to the wind. It was determined to burn itself to save Xiaochen's life. Are you Xiaochuan? Xiaochen climbed up with great difficulty and looked at the guy in front of him. His clothes were torn by the explosion, and his face was covered with a layer of ash. He couldn't see anything. He could only vaguely tell from the familiar voice and way of speaking that this guy was probably Xiaochuan. With that thought in mind, the hellfire of the underworld immediately recalled all of his clones and instantly condensed them into a huge bluish-purple fireball. With a whistling sound, he turned around and smashed the biohumans that were swarming toward him on the ground. If I wasn't smart, I'm afraid I'd be trapped in this valley for the rest of my life. If that's the case, I won't be able to see Xiaochen Appa anymore. Xiaochen Appa is so mighty and strong. I can't hog him for myself, or else little sister Tang Tang will definitely kill me. Sigh, what a pity. Infatuated Xiaochen, the game of cat and mouse is over. I'd like to see who can save you this time. Seeing that the flying sword was also controlled, Miss Luan waved her hand decisively and shouted coldly. Boom! A huge explosion rang out, and a sound wave swept up a ferocious shockwave and spread out. For a moment sand, stones and smoke filled the air. Dust and gravel filled the air, and a huge pit was blasted open on the ground. Yes, I'm little Yaya. The newcomer stomped her feet lightly and pouted coquettishly. Xiaochen Appa, you're so naughty. How could you forget my looks? Master, I'm here to save you. Seeing the situation on Xiaochen's side, and Xiaoma immediately broke free from Situ Haotian's left hand, controlled the flying sword to rush over, and directly swung the sword to cut off the heads of several biohumans. The figure's toes gently touched the ground, and he jumped out of the big pit caused by the explosion. His toes touched the lake again, and his body flew into the air again. The hellfire of the underworld was still around Miss Luan, but after seeing this scene, he couldn't care less. His main duty was to protect his master Xiaochen. Now that his master was in trouble, even if he had to sacrifice his own life, even if he had to kill his family, he must help him out. However, when he was about to continue to kill, he found that the two biohumans in front of him were the parents that Tang Tang had just called for. He suddenly stopped and couldn't kill them. Although Xiaochuan looked a little angry, he felt sweet in his heart at this time. After all, since he entered the world of cultivation, he had been looking for Xiaochen's whereabouts. Now that his wish had finally come true, he was naturally happy. But this time, Xiaochen was not so lucky. In the case of multitasking, he had no time to dodge. He was hit several times in a row, and even his protective primordial chi was broken. He took a few steps back, and his legs went soft. He knelt on the ground, opened his mouth, and spat out a mouthful of blood. And Xiaoma was still thinking about how to bypass them and cut other biohumans. Unexpectedly, Tang Tang's parents suddenly reached out their hands and grabbed the flying sword directly. Xiaochen Appa. What a coincidence to meet you here. You don't know, I've been looking for you so anxiously. Landing lightly beside Xiaochen, the person looked at Xiaochen's face excitedly, but it didn't take long for his eyebrows to furrow, and said with a little anger, Xiaochen Appa, how did you get hurt? Who beat you up like this? Hurry up and tell them. I'll avenge you and kill them all. Because Xiaochen was injured, he could no longer control Situ Haotian with his mind. Situ Haotian finally regained his consciousness, but he had exhausted his energy. He collapsed to the ground involuntarily, foaming at the corner of his mouth, and fainted. Xiaochen naturally understood the intention of the flame of the underworld, but he couldn't watch his father be killed in front of him. What's more, Among these biohumans were Chung Minjing's uncle and Tang Tang's parents. He couldn't bear such a heavy sin. Instead of letting the flame of the underworld kill them, it was better to be killed himself. The figure floating in the air swept the surroundings with his extremely sharp eyes. Suddenly, as if he had discovered a new continent, his pupils burst with a burst of extraordinary splendor. In an instant, he displayed an inconceivably enchanting movement technique and rushed towards his destination like a graceful swallow. On the other side, Sita Qitian had been cut by his godfather's flying sword to the point of dying. He lay on the ground unconscious with his eyes rolled and twitched from time to time. Chapter 1534. Can't you speak normally? Furthermore, your face is covered in dust and black as ink. Who would be able to tell who you are? Xiaochen could not help but roll his eyes as he grumpily said. He was about to ask Yu Xiaochuan how he suddenly appeared in the teleportation point when he saw Yu Xiaochuan take out a small mirror from nowhere and look at his face. Then he let out a cry of surprise, turned around, and ran in the direction of the lake. This guy, what is he trying to do? Xiaochen watched speechlessly as Yu Xiaochuan ran to the lake, splashed the lake water on his face, and carefully washed it. He seemed to have reapplied some makeup before returning to Xiaochen with satisfaction. Xiaochen Appa, look again. Is my face still dirty now? Yu Xiaochuan asked shyly as he stroked his cheeks. There was a blush on his face. Okay, that's it. Xiaochen waved his hand helplessly. He really did not have the energy to complain about Yu Xiaochuan's heavy makeup. Besides, he had just escaped from the hands of the Grim Reaper and had not yet recovered. The power of the previous explosion was too strong. The shock wave brought by the sound wave not only pushed the fire of the underworld, which had not yet descended, and the biohumans on the ground more than a dozen feet away, but even Miss Luan, who was in the air, was sent flying. No matter who attacked, they were all forced back. It was a mess, and they could not even stand steadily. The teleportation point connected to the Green Demonic Valley was razed to the ground by the explosion. Most of Situ Haotian's subordinates who were originally investigating nearby were vaporized by the explosion, leaving only a few broken limbs and remains, which flew into the sky and then fell in all directions. Fortunately, when the explosion happened, Xiaochen was slightly injured and was lying on the ground, so he was able to escape the violent shock wave. Otherwise, even if he did not die, he would have been seriously injured. If Xiaochen Appa thinks it's okay, then it's okay. Yu Xiaochuan lowered his head shyly and said embarrassedly, when I went to open Heavenly Gate, I didn't know I would meet you. Otherwise, I would have brought more advanced cosmetics. Ahem. That's not important. Tell me, what level are you at now? Xiaochen changed the topic with great difficulty. When he was observing Yu Xiaochuan just now, Xiaochen realized that he couldn't see through this guy's level at all. So he was a little curious. Could it be that this sissy's strength was higher than his? I have no idea. Yu Xiaochuan first shook his head with a blank expression, then suddenly stuck out his tongue mischievously and said, Xiaochen Appa, you know it too. My talent isn't as smart as yours, so my cultivation progress has always been very slow. But ever since I ate all the treasures in that valley, I feel like I've become stronger. Although I'm not as powerful as you, I think I'm almost there, hee. Forcefully suppressing the churning impulse in his stomach, Xiaochen took a deep breath and muttered to himself. About the same as me? The energy of that explosion just now was several times stronger than my strength. This fellow was really humble. I was wondering why the treasures in the Devil Valley looked like they were eaten by wild beasts. So it was this fellow who did it. Xiaochen Appa, what are you talking about? Yu Xiaochuan couldn't help but ask curiously when he saw Xiaochen's constipated expression. Nothing. I'm asking you, how did you get out of the Green Devil Valley? Why was there a big explosion? Xiaochen waved his hand and asked. Xiaochen Appa, you're not going to that broken place, are you? Yu Xiaochuan pouted and complained angrily. You'd better not go in there. It's full of poisonous gas, and there's no exit. I ran the entire valley several times, and only found a few waterfalls. I couldn't find any exit. I was so angry that I blew up one of the waterfalls. I don't know what happened, but then I found myself back outside. It's amazing, isn't it? Yu Xiaochuan, why are you here? At this time, Tang Tang, who was hiding in the woods, was also attracted by the explosion. After seeing Yu Xiaochuan, she asked in surprise, You just said that you came out of the Green Devil Valley? Then why are you still alive? Shouldn't you be poisoned to death? Hong Zhu and the other women followed behind Tang Tang. They also stared at Yu Xiaochuan, as if they were looking at a monster, puzzled. Sister Tang Tang. Boo-hoo. It's great that you're fine. Do you know, when those bad guys took you away, I was so anxious that I almost cried. If you were injured or missing, how would I explain it to Xiaochuan Appa? Later, I endured my injuries and followed them all the way. When I was hungry, I ate the dregs that they threw out from the yard. And then, seeing that Tang Tang was safe and sound, Yu Xiaochuan couldn't help but cry tears of joy. He wiped his tears while recounting his recent experience. It's really hard on you. The more Tang Tang listened, the more speechless she became, especially when she heard that Yu Xiaochuan ate all the dregs of the poisons that were thrown out. She felt nauseous. However, nausea was one thing. What surprised Tang Tang more was that this guy didn't have a body that was immune to all poisons like she did. He was not poisoned to death by so many poisons. Moreover, after entering the Green Devil Valley, he was still alive, and even his cultivation had improved so much. It was simply incredible. The faces of Hong Zhu and the other women were also a little ugly, but they still forcibly suppressed the uncomfortable feeling. After listening to Yu Xiaochuan's description, the women looked at each other and didn't know what to say for a while. Yu Xiaochuan's concern for Tang Tang and Xiao Chun was naturally very touching, but everything he did had a strange flavor that made it impossible for them to empathize with him. Yu Xiaochuan didn't mind the strange looks of Tang Tang and the others at all. At this moment, he was most concerned about Xiao Chen's enemy. After briefly recounting his experience, he immediately pulled Xiao Chen's sleeve and asked eagerly, By the way, Xiao Chen Appa, which bastard beat you up like this? Tell me quickly, he wants to avenge you. It's the female spirit in the sky, but she seems to be very powerful. You have to be careful. Xiao Chen hesitated for a moment and pointed to Miss Luan, who was floating in the air. Xiao Chen couldn't say that he was beaten by his father, who had turned into a biohuman. Could he? Otherwise, wouldn't his father become the bastard in Yu Xiaochuan's words? Miss Luan, who was sent flying by the shock wave, flew back at this moment. Just now her attention was all on Xiao Chen, so she didn't know what the explosion was about. Chapter 1535. Miss Luan looked at Yu Xiaochuan, who had appeared out of nowhere, in astonishment. She could not be bothered with this guy who was neither a man nor a woman. She waited for the biohumans to stand up straight before ordering them to continue attacking Xiao Chen. At this time, the flame of the underworld had also returned to Xiao Chen's side. It thought that it would be reprimanded by Xiao Chen. It did not expect that not only did Xiao Chen not complain, but he even thanked it. This made the flame of the underworld feel a little flattered. Sister Tang Tang, take Xiao Chen Appa to the side to heal his wounds. Leave this to me. Yu Xiaochuan grunted and gave a few instructions to Tang Tang. Then, without looking back, he rushed toward the biohumans who were ready to attack. Yu Xiaochuan aimed at the necks of two of the biohumans from afar and waved his hand gently. 5 thin lines vaguely flashed in the air. Then, the heads of the 2 biohumans fell to the ground with a plop. Yu Xiaochuan, don't attack those biohumans. My father, Cheng Minjing's uncle, and Tang Tang's parents are all in there. When Xiao Chen saw this, he could not help but break out in a cold sweat. He hurriedly shouted, We have to attack the female ghost in the air and make her turn into an atomized primordial spirit. Then we have to cooperate with my flame of the underworld to burn her. Only then can we kill her. After shouting, Xiao Chen wiped the sweat on his forehead with lingering fear. Fortunately, the 2 biohumans that Yu Xiaochuan had just killed were not his relatives. Otherwise, he would have regretted it so much. If it wasn't for the fact that his family members were mixed in with the cyborgs, Xiao Chen wouldn't have been beaten to such a sorry state. Okay. I know. Don't worry, Xiao Chen Appa. I will never attack the biohumans again. When Yu Xiaochuan received the message from Xiao Chen, he immediately nodded. He raised his eyes and stared at the primordial spirit in the sky. When Miss Luan saw Yu Xiaochuan's movements just now, she already faintly felt that something was wrong. But because his speed was too fast, she didn't have time to judge his strength. At this time, seeing Yu Xiaochuan staring at her, she immediately prepared to defend. In the blink of an eye, Yu Xiaochuan's figure suddenly exploded. Like a comet, he leaped into the air, dragging a long trail of light behind him. Then, he opened his 5 fingers and directly scratched Miss Luan's face. You're already an immortal prime. Young Miss Luan was shocked and blurted out. She hesitated for a moment, and was almost swept by Yu Xiaochuan's nails. Fortunately, she turned into mist in time, and escaped the attack of the sharp claws. Seeing that Yu Xiaochuan and Miss Luan were fighting, Xiao Chen immediately sat down cross-legged, and began to circulate his energy through his meridians. Then he said to the flame of the 9 underworlds, Nethery, go and help Yu Xiaochuan. Find a chance to burn that nascent soul. I'll take the time to recover, and then I'll help you. Yes, master. The flame of the 9 underworlds responded, and instantly disappeared into the air. The next moment, it appeared beside Yu Xiaochuan. While Miss Luan's nascent soul had yet to condense into a solid body, it rushed over with a swoosh sound. Miss Luan couldn't help but scream. She immediately condensed a solid body and floated in the air. However, her thigh was obviously blackened. It was obvious that she had been burned by the flame of the 9 underworlds. However, Yu Xiaochuan wasn't like Miss Luan, who could stay in the air for a long time. After his attack missed, he once again fell to the ground. Just as Yu Xiaochuan was about to attack again, the bioweapons, who had been waiting nearby, immediately surrounded him. They used all kinds of techniques to beat him up. However, after Yu Xiaochuan knew the identity of these people, he didn't dare to fight back. He could only let the punches and kicks of the bioweapons fall on every part of his body like raindrops. Although these bioweapons were all at the first level of the sea-splitting stage, and their punches and kicks were quite powerful, Yu Xiaochuan had already broken through to the celestial prime realm. His level was much higher than Xiao Chen's. Hence, he didn't care about their attacks at all. Even if they really hit his body, he wouldn't feel any pain or injury. What annoyed Yu Xiaochuan the most was that every time he fell to the ground, he would be entangled by these guys. He couldn't fight back, and it was difficult for him to escape. If he forcefully used his qi to shake them off, it was very likely that he would accidentally injure them. In desperation, Yu Xiaochuan could only look for the occasional gap between the attacks of the bioweapons, and leave the battle to deal with Miss Luan. This greatly reduced his efficiency. On the other hand, Miss Luan, who was fighting on the other side, didn't look much better. Continuing to maintain her physical state required a lot of her qi. Yu Xiaochuan's sharp claws would attack her from time to time, causing her body to be injured. Miss Luan's physical state wasn't her real body. Even if she was scratched by the claws, she wouldn't bleed or break her bones. However, there would still be wounds on her body, causing her to lose some qi. Hence, every time Miss Luan was scratched by Yu Xiaochuan, she had to vaporize into her primordial spirit state as soon as possible. Then she would condense a new physical state. This way, the wounds on her body would heal, and not lose a large amount of qi. However, the fire of the underworld was always watching from the side. Every time Miss Luan turned into a fog, it would take the opportunity to attack and burn her primordial spirit. How dare you hurt my Xiao Chen Appa? Go to hell, you stinking monster! Miss Luan had just dodged the flames of the fire of the underworld, when she heard Yu Xiaochuan's angry curse coming from behind her. Then, there was a tearing sound on her back. In an instant, there were 10 scratches from the sharp claws. Bastard! How dare you call me a monster? You're the real pervert! Miss Luan couldn't dodge in time, and couldn't help but curse angrily. Feeling that the wounds on her back were constantly spewing out qi, Miss Luan decisively turned into a fog, and prepared to condense into a physical state again. However, Before Miss Luan's physical state was completed, the fire of the underworld suddenly appeared beside her silently and quickly flew towards her primordial spirit that had turned into a fog. Yu Xiaochuan tactfully retreated to avoid it so that he wouldn't be caught in the crossfire. As she couldn't move when she condensed into a physical state, Miss Luan was careless, and the fire of the underworld took advantage of her weakness and burned a trace of her primordial spirit. Ah! Miss Luan screamed as she felt a burning pain in her stomach. She gritted her teeth and waited for the solidification to complete. Only then did she lower her head to take a look. She found that her lower abdomen had been burnt black. It looked a little scary. After fighting back and forth for a while, Yu Xiaochuan and the fire of the underworld became more and more skillful. Every time Yu Xiaochuan turned Miss Luan into a fog, the latter would take the opportunity to rush up and burn her. It always succeeded. Chapter 1536. Due to the damage caused by the heavenly flame to the atomized primordial spirit, the damage would also appear on the real body. So, after a few rounds, Miss Luan, who was originally thin and strong, was no longer as powerful as before. Her body was black in the east and gray in the west. She was burned beyond recognition, like an old rag doll thrown into the fire. However, even so, Miss Luan was still full of fighting power. Except for the many black spots on her body that were a little ugly, there was no difference from the beginning. She did not slow down in the fight, but became fiercer and fiercer. Her gray face was full of hostility. After another piece of skin on her, but was burned by the fire of the underworld, Miss Luan was finally completely enraged. She turned into a real body and shouted, "Sissy, do you really think I'm easy to bully? Is it fun to burn me?" Yu Xiaochuan did not want to be outdone. Although he was standing on the ground and being attacked by a group of biohumans, he still raised his hand and pointed at Miss Luan in the air. "I don't know whether you are fun or not, but you dare to hurt our Xiaochen Appa. You have to pay the price." "Price? I will let you know what the real price is now." Miss Luan was so angry that she laughed and said in a gloomy and dangerous tone. Before Yu Xiaochuan could react, Miss Luan's energy in her body suddenly soared. While she was chanting, she drew a circle in front of her chest with her hands. A transparent round mirror, covered with strange runes, suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Although Miss Luan had not started to attack, there was already an overwhelming pressure pouring down from the sky. At this moment, Xiao Chen's injury had almost recovered. When he opened his eyes, he felt a suffocating momentum in the air. Looking up in surprise, Xiao Chen's face changed instantly. He immediately urged his energy and stood in front of Tang Tang and the other girls. He shouted cautiously, "Little Nethery Yu Xiaochuan, that mirror is strange. Be careful." "What's going on?" Yu Xiaochuan was looking at the mirror. Suddenly, he felt that the pressure on his body had disappeared. Subconsciously looking around, he found that the biohumans that attacked him had all run away. They stood in a distance and stared at him. No one took the initiative to approach him. This is really a little strange. Ha ha ha. Xiao Chen, at least you still have some eyesight. But unfortunately it's too late. Young Mistress Luan laughed arrogantly. She controlled the transparent round mirror with both hands and aimed it at where Yu Xiaochuan was standing. She infused her essence into the transparent round mirror and shouted, "Sky Shatter." As soon as Miss Luan shouted, the surface of the transparent round mirror suddenly flashed, and then a huge white energy pillar shot out from the mirror, like a waterfall hanging on the Milky Way, heavily smashing into Yu Xiaochuan's body. Boom! A powerful explosion instantly blasted a large crater in the ground that was originally quite flat, and it contrasted with the large crater that Yu Xiaochuan had blasted out of the jade green demonic valley not far away. The explosion also brought about a shockwave ripple. The biohumans that had fled far away were still shaken by the shockwave. Even the wooden house was affected, and more than half of it collapsed with a crackling sound. The electronic instrument in the house was also hit by a few pieces of collapsed wood. All kinds of indicator lights on it kept flashing. Miss Luan floated over to take a few glances, and found that the instrument was operating well. Only then did she feel relieved and returned to her original place. If this explosion destroyed the instrument that she had worked so hard to make, it would be a big joke. Tang Tang and the other girls, who were shaken to the ground, also stood up at this time with each other's help. They looked at the big crater not far away in horror. Fortunately, Xiao Chun stood in front of them during the explosion. Otherwise, with their weak strength, they might have been directly killed by the aftermath of the explosion. Haotian's spiritual mirror. I didn't expect her to find such a legendary instrument. It seems that your friend is in danger. Elder Heaven Ancestor, who had not spoken for a long time, suddenly sighed softly and said in Xiao Chen's sea of consciousness very solemnly, "Yi Xiaochuan." Xiao Chen's heart immediately tightened. He could not help but yell at the pit, and then ran to the big pit anxiously. As he ran, he asked anxiously in the sea of consciousness, "Elder Heaven Ancestor, what is that Haotian spiritual mirror? Why is it so powerful?" Haotian spiritual mirror. I don't know much about this instrument. If you want to investigate its origin, I'm afraid you have to go back to the time of the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan. Elder Heaven Ancestor tried hard to recall the information he had learned before. I only heard that its power can be multiplied according to the level of the user. The only thing to be thankful for is that every time this mirror releases energy, it needs to be condensed for a period of time before it can be released again. Xiao Chen calmed down a little and immediately asked, "Is there any way to destroy it before it releases again?" "Sorry, I haven't heard of any way to destroy the Haotian spiritual mirror." Elder Heaven Ancestor's tone was somewhat bitter, and it was clear that he was also very helpless. Xiao Chen's heart sank, and he frowned tightly. He jumped into the pit, only to see Yu Xiaochuan lying on the ground with his face facing upwards. He was already in a state of exhaling more than he was inhaling. Ignoring young Lady Luan, who was still floating in the air, Xiao Chen immediately ran over and grabbed Yu Xiaochuan's arm, continuously injecting his Yuan Qi into the Haotian spiritual mirror. "Ha ha ha, Xiao Chen, I suggest that you save your Yuan Qi to escape. This abnormal guy is already dead." Young Lady Luan laughed arrogantly a few times, and continued to inject Yuan Qi into the Haotian spiritual mirror. A strange balance suddenly appeared on the battlefield. Neither of them attacked. Young Lady Luan controlled the Haotian spiritual mirror, while Xiao Chen used Yuan Qi to save Yu Xiaochuan. Although the two of them were doing the same thing, one was killing, while the other was saving. At that moment, young Lady Luan, who was holding the Haotian spiritual mirror, was in a physical state, so the flames of the underworld could not do anything to her. It could only temporarily retreat to Xiao Chen's side and wait for the next order. "Ugh, Xiao Chen Appa." The unconscious Yu Xiaochuan suddenly felt a warmth coming from his arm, and his body's functions seemed to be gradually recovering. He opened his eyes with difficulty, and when he looked up, he found that it was Xiao Chun who was holding his arm firmly. Yu Xiaochuan could not help but blush slightly, and he said in a shy voice, "Xiao Chen Appa, what are you doing to me? It feels so comfortable." That you're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.